Chapter 1131, Hey Fans Gu Refinement. Chapter 1131, Hey Fans Gu Refinement. Translator. Atlas Studios. Editor. Atlas Studios. Compared to Hey Fan, even though I have many immortal Gu, I am unable to use all of them to this extent. Fong Yuan reflected upon himself. Hey Fan's true inheritance gave him a lot of insight to his problems, but he did not waver. It is great that I can raise so many immortal Gu as well. Gu immortals placed great focus on their calamities and tribulations. The more they cultivated, the tougher the calamities and tribulations. Hey Fan had few immortal Gu, his burden of feeding them was low, but he had many methods to deal with all sorts of situations. He accumulated his resources, even if he sold them, by storing up immortal essence stones. He could have a huge immortal essence stone stockpile. And Hey Fan had a tribe, a super force with the Huang Jin bloodline. Hey Fan liked to nurture descendants. He had a lot of immortal Gu that were not too important. Before setting up the true inheritance, he had given them out to Hey tribe's Gu immortals, or placed them into the treasury and passed them down. Hey Fan did not have one of the 10 extreme physiques. His immortal aperture had limited potential. The resources he could grow also had a limit. All in all, he fed just a few immortal Gu and researched many killer moves for them. It was a very wise choice. But Fong Yuan was different. Different situations needed to be analyzed in depth. The first difference was his sovereign immortal aperture. The sovereign immortal aperture had immense potential. Feeding Gu was a burden, feeding immortal Gu was a greater burden. But Fong Yuan could afford to do so, easily in fact. The second difference was that Fong Yuan was alone. He was alone, he only had to care for himself. He did not need to worry for a tribe, or give any attention to his descendants. This was the advantage of being a loner. The advantage of a tribe was shared resources and helping each other. But at Hey Fan's level, he was the one giving the tribe benefits. But Hey Fan had never thought of leaving the tribe. He had grown up in this tribal environment. During his growth, he had received a lot of help from the tribe, relationships, friendships, and kinship. He had all of them. He cared about the tribe, and his descendants. The environment that a person grows up in has a huge influence on them. And Fong Yuan was free and unrestrained. He had almost zero burden in this aspect. Even though he joined Xianxia sect, he was just making use of them. The third difference was that Fong Yuan had huge pressure in survival. He needed a lot of immortal Gu. Immortal Gu were unique. With a greater number of them in all aspects, they could deal with many situations. For example, he could use Flying Sword immortal Gu to attack, and Sword Escape immortal Gu to retreat. Even without killer moves, Fong Yuan could use immortal Gu to deal with many situations. In fact, having many immortal Gu was useful and helpful to the construction of immortal killer moves. Immortal killer moves used core immortal Gu and supplementary mortal Gu. For example, Fong Yuan's sword marks targeting death, a sword path immortal killer move, used Flying Sword immortal Gu as the core, and a small number of supplementary sword path mortal Gu. If Fong Yuan did not have Flying Sword immortal Gu, and only had Sword Escape immortal Gu, how would he use Sword Escape in place of Flying Sword to unleash sword marks targeting death? Sword Escape replacing Flying Sword was possible. Because the two were Sword Path immortal Gu, they were interchangeable on this basis. But the entire killer move, sword marks targeting death, would need to be heavily altered. Flying Sword was used as an attacking immortal Gu. It was easy to construct an offensive killer move with it. But Sword Escape was a movement immortal Gu. If it were to replace Flying Sword, the mortal Gu used for sword marks targeting death would need to be changed, and increased drastically in number. This way, when using sword marks targeting death, the process would be more lengthy and difficult, the failure rate would be higher, and it would have less feasibility as a whole. Looking at it overall, Hey Fan's development method suited most people, but it did not suit Fong Yuan. Fong Yuan's Gu raising method was the most optimal for himself. But if other Gu immortals mimicked him, they would be courting death. Fong Yuan continued to read. After the immortal killer moves, Hey Fan's true inheritance talked about mortal killer moves. There was an even greater number of these killer moves, a large portion of them were time path, but Fang Yuan basically had no need for them anymore. Immortal and mortal was vastly different. Maybe in the future, Fang Yuan could use these methods to probe other Gu immortals in battle, but they had little use, because Fang Yuan already had a good number of exemplary mortal killer moves. He already had numerous blood path and strength path killer moves. These mortal killer moves might only have one use in the end, to be the foundation for deductions. After the mortal killer moves, there were some incomplete killer moves, including both immortal and mortal killer moves. The completion rate varied, some were even simply inspired ideas or guesses. These were things that He Fan had never completed even upon his death. Deducing killer moves was unavoidable and essential in a Gu immortal's cultivation journey. Fang Yuan took a look, nothing really caught his eye. His time path attainment level was too low, and he could not use Wisdom Gu. Furthermore, Fang Yuan already had many useful methods, they were sufficient. As a result, his browsing of killer moves ended. After returning, I will need to spend a lot of time practicing these killer moves. Fang Yuan planned. The usage of killer moves could end in failure. If during an intense battle, the activation fails, the Gu immortal would suffer a backlash. If it was during a critical moment in battle, that would be terrible. One killer move's success or failure could directly affect the outcome of the battle, or even determine life and death itself. Thus, one had to be extremely familiar and proficient with their killer moves. This would use some funds as well. The supplementary mortal Gu that made up the killer moves needed to be purchased. When practicing, activating immortal killer moves would expend immortal essence. And practicing would definitely occur more than once. All of these required money, money, money. Thus, the development of a Gu immortal's immortal aperture was extremely important in their cultivation. Finances were the foundation for military might. Fighting was dangerous, and with the threat of calamities and tribulations, unless huge benefits or conflicts were involved, Gu immortals usually preferred to live in peace instead. To practice so many killer moves, I need a lot of funds. Fang Yuan frowned, he felt both joy and worry. Of course, this was simply a blissful worry. Large numbers of immortal killer moves, even more mortal killer moves and incomplete killer moves. After looking at them, Fang Yuan moved on to Gu recipes. Immortal Gu recipes. Among which, the first was the parallel refinement method of immortal level year Gu. There were quite a few parallel refinement Gu recipes. There were a total of 5, they could achieve parallel refinement in Elevate Year Gu. At the back, He Fan even noted his experiences, he talked about the advantages and disadvantages of all 5 methods, and some tips when undergoing parallel refinement. Just the methods recorded here was incredibly insightful for Fang Yuan. Out of the 5 parallel refinement immortal Gu recipes, the one He Fan used the most was the final one. This immortal Gu recipe was created by He Fan in his later years. It used the least ingredients and had the highest success rate, it expended the least amount of time and mental energy as well. Overall, it used a large number of mortal level year Gu and added them into the immortal level year Gu, thus the effect was great. After developing this, He Fan almost abandoned the first 4 Gu recipes, he used this parallel refinement method solely. But because of the comprehensive nature of He Fan's true inheritance, he recorded the 4 recipes into it regardless. Rank 8 immortal Gu years flow like water can produce countless mortal year Gu, these year Gu can be used to parallel refine immortal level year Gu, it is so convenient. Fang Yuan sighed as he continued looking. Next was the immortal Gu recipe of refining after immortal Gu. Fang Yuan already had this immortal Gu, he only took one glance at it. Overall, the number of immortal Gu recipes was quite shocking. There were nearly 100. And all of them were fully completed immortal Gu recipes. Most were rank 6, some were rank 7, and there were only 2 or 3 rank 8 immortal Gu recipes. In terms of path, most were time path, but there were also other paths like fire path and luck path. Compared to the immortal killer moves, these immortal Gu recipes were more disorganized. There were recently created immortal Gu recipes, there were also ancient recipes with extinct immortal materials, they could not be used anymore. Among all of the immortal Gu recipes, He Fan placed the greatest emphasis on years flow like water. The rank 8 immortal Gu years flow like water was actually the creation of He Fan. His inspiration was obtained by constantly parallel refining year Gu. He Fan had described the entire process of refining years flow like water in great detail. In order to get enough immortal materials, he had expended the entire He tribe treasury, and used up a lot of favors and paid a huge price to ask 2 refinement path great experts to help. In the end, he was still in a lot of debt. To refine years flow like water, He Fan had placed all of his effort into it. During the refinement process, he had suffered failure after failure, there was several times he wanted to give up. He Fan had recorded all of these mental states down, he was not afraid of his descendants laughing at him. This showed that He Fan had truly put his heart and soul into creating this true inheritance. In the end, because of his relatively good luck, after 9 failures, he finally succeeded. In his words, all of the difficulties and risks that He Fan faced when refining the rank 8 immortal Gu was expressed in detail. Even after succeeding, He Fan did not recoup his losses for many years to come. He solemnly warned his inheritor to treasure the fruits of his predecessors' hard work greatly. If they cultivate to rank 8 in the future, when refining rank 8 immortal Gu, they had to be extremely careful. Fang Yuan saw this and thought of old ancestor Xuehu. Right now, this old fellow was also refining a rank 8 immortal Gu. And this immortal Gu was extremely precious, it was fortune rivaling heaven Gu. According to what Xianxia Land's spirit said, this immortal Gu was created in Giant Sun Immortal Venerable's later years using the essence of luck path. Refining rank 8 was a huge gamble. Old ancestor Xuehu had Ma Hongyun as the main ingredient, it saved him a lot of costs. But even so, when gathering immortal materials, he had discarded his reputation, he went personally to Zombie Alliance to steal immortal zombie corpses, he even went to He tribe's treasury and looted it. The entire snowy mountain blessed land was in chaos because of his actions, everyone was worried. Yao Huang was also trying to refine resurrection from the dead immortal Gu. According to the rumors in Northern Plains Gu immortal world, this immortal Gu was also rank 8. Actually, everyone knew about the risks of refining a rank 8 immortal Gu. But why did they still try? As a matter of fact, having a rank 8 immortal Gu and not having one meant 2 completely different states. Rank 8 Gu immortals had to undergo tribulations as well, they usually had low lifespan, many times, they had no choice but to take a risk. Old ancestor Xuehu was doing this for his tribulation, while Yao Huang was trying to prolong his life. Calamities and tribulations could not hinder He Fan, but he had limited lifespan, he eventually died. Tribulations and lifespan. Fang Yuan knew that in his quest for eternal life, he had to get through these 2 tough problems. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report chapter so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 1132, Taking Over He Fan Grotto Heaven. Chapter 1132, Taking Over He Fan Grotto Heaven. Translator. Atlas Studios. Editor. Atlas Studios. After the immortal Gu recipes, there were mortal Gu recipes. There were many mortal Gu recipes, Fang Yuan felt a little shocked seeing all of them. The ones worth looking at were the mortal Gu recipes of day, month, and year Gu. In accordance with these mortal Gu recipes, Fang Yuan could buy his mortal materials and refine his own mortal level day Gu, month Gu, and year Gu. This way, not only can I buy these mortal Gu in Treasure Yellow Heaven, I can also refine them myself. This would no doubt greatly reduce my preparation. But it is a waste for me to do the refinement myself, I should ask the hairy men in Xianxia's sect to do it. Thinking of this, Fang Yuan frowned uncontrollably. His relationship with Xianxia's sect had already turned cold, he would need to improve their relationship if he were to ask them for help. Forget about these for now, Fang Yuan continued to look at He Fan's true inheritance. After immortal Gu recipes and mortal Gu recipes, there were some incomplete Gu recipes. They had varying completion rates, some were 90%, stuck at a crucial step. Some were at 10 to 20%, they were at the initial stages of creation. Immortal Gu before. Fong Yuan's gaze halted. Among the incomplete Immortal Gu recipes, the before Immortal Gu recipe was only 57% complete. Before Immortal Gu, after Immortal Gu, they were related Immortal Gu. Evidently, in He Fan's lifetime, after obtaining after Immortal Gu, he had greatly desired before Immortal Gu. Unfortunately, even until his death, he did not succeed. Next was He Fan's recorded experiences in deducing these Gu recipes. He talked about the difficulties of deduction, he told his inheritor not to be afraid of difficulty and to persevere. At the same time, he talked about the importance of inspiration. Thus, behind this, He Fan wrote about some tricks and tips. Like using Wisdom Path Inspiration Gu, and Light Path a Flash of Inspiration Gu, to help him with the deduction. Looking at this, Fong Yuan smiled. He was a Wisdom Path Grandmaster, he had obtained Dong Fong Chang Fan's Wisdom Path True Inheritance, he dominated He Fan in this aspect. He Fan's experiences in this aspect were quite shallow from Fong Yuan's perspective. Everyone had their own field of expertise, even though He Fan was skilled, he had his weak points too. Like how Giant Sun Immortal Venerable and Thieving Heaven Demon Venerable looked to Long Hair Ancestor for help to refine Immortal Gu. After killer moves and Gu recipes, there were He Fan's own cultivation experiences. Among this, there were maps, including the 5 regions and even White Heaven and Black Heaven, they had huge value in terms of reference. Of course, Northern Plains map was the most detailed, the other 4 regions were more simple. Fong Yuan placed the most attention on the maps of White Heaven and Black Heaven, this had broadened his horizons. Some strong rank 7 Gu immortals and all rank 8 Gu immortals would often explore Black Heaven and White Heaven, scavenging for resources within. As an expert among rank 8s, He Fan was no exception. After the maps, there were lots of secrets regarding the Gu immortal world. Like Imperial Court Blessed Land and 88 True Yang Building, there was the most information about these. But they were useless now. And He Fan's own conjectures. What attracted Fong Yuan the most was one of them. He Fan was suspicious that a Time Path Gu immortal had inherited Red Lotus True Inheritance. From this record, Fong Yuan could sense that He Fan had a huge desire towards Red Lotus True Inheritance. This was expected. He was a Time Path great expert, he naturally sought out and looked up to the number 1 Time Path True Inheritance in the world. The final important point was He Fan's own ideas and experimentation on the development of an immortal aperture. Using his own situation as an example, he clearly stated how calamities and tribulations, Dao marks, and immortal aperture helped each other in an intrinsic relationship, and how to modify the immortal aperture's environment, like how to alter the rate of time inside. There was also the management of the immortal aperture, and the selling of resources. The important point here was Year Gu. Back then, after He Fan refined rank 8 immortal Gu years flow like water, he started selling mortal level Year Gu, it became his most lucrative business. In just a few months, he became the biggest Year Gu vendor in the world, he was earning huge profits. With this rank 8 immortal Gu, he had an unceasing gold mine. However, He Fan had also stated the possibility of the attack of Year Beasts. How to deal with the Year Beast attacks, how to capture Year Beasts, how to dissect Year Beasts, and how to sell Year Beasts. There was also the relationship between Year Beasts and the immortal aperture and others. Fong Yuan looked on with a frown. In He Fan's immortal aperture, because of years flow like water, immemorial level Year Beasts had once went in. They had rank 8 battle strength. He Fan spent a lot of effort in killing them. Because he fought in his immortal aperture, the result was immense losses. Many times, He Fan felt pain due to his losses. After a painful lesson, He Fan started to research on how to seal years flow like water, and conceal its aura when not using it. He found and invented many methods, that were all recorded in the True Inheritance. He had made great achievements. However, He Fan warned the inheritor to be careful on something, that was to use immortal Gu years flow like water carefully when in battle. Once they fought against a strong foe and lured an immemorial year beast over to attack their immortal aperture, they would be in deep trouble. It seems that I need to be very careful when using years flow like water. If I am careless and heavens will uses this opportunity to lure immemorial year beasts to me, I would die. Fong Yuan was only rank 6, he could not fight against a rank 8 level existence. With a huge difference in strength, there would be no unexpected lucky circumstances that could save him. His consciousness returned from the mortal letter Gu. Fong Yuan let out a breath. He Fan's true inheritance is truly the work of a time path great expert, he lives up to his name. Fong Yuan praised, but the difficulty to inherit this is too high. Precisely because of the difficulty, He tribe's descendants worked hard but did not succeed. In the end, Fong Yuan took advantage of it and obtained the fruits of his labor. Don't look at how easy of a time Fong Yuan had, it had many preconditions. Like Attitude Gu and Familiar Face, he even had Chu Du's help to obtain the heavenly crystal eagle nest. However, according to the logic of the Gu immortal world, the inheritances left behind by people of He Fan's level are usually this difficult. For example, Nian Air tribe's Nian Air sword saint true inheritance. An inheritor would only appear every few hundred years, the current one was Nian Air Pingji. He Fan and Nian Air Sword Saint were people who left their names in history, they were prideful people, they were unwilling to have their inheritances obtained by useless people that would tarnish their reputation, they set difficult requirements to choose a worthy successor, it was normal. Next, I have to take over this He Fan Grotto Heaven. Fong Yuan looked at the brass bell heavenly spirit, signaling to it. At the next moment, the brass bell heavenly spirit slowly flew towards Fong Yuan. Fong Yuan smiled. When he inherited He Fan's true inheritance, he became the owner of He Fan Grotto Heaven, he could naturally command this brass bell heavenly spirit. The regretful thing was, He Fan Grotto Heaven had absorbed the immemorial Azure Heaven fragment, it made the brass bell heavenly spirit mindless and unresponsive, Fong Yuan could not manipulate it easily, it was hard to communicate, it was worse than Hu Immortal Land Spirit. Fong Yuan first looked at Immortal Succession Mountain. This mountain had many pavilions on it. Each one had an inheritance in it. Some of the inheritances were mortal level, while some were left by Gu Immortals. The Gu Immortals originally in He Fan Grotto Heaven had ascended Immortal Succession Mountain when they were mortals, after getting the inheritances, they slowly cultivated their way up. Unfortunately, their generations of development were in vain, Fong Yuan killed all of them on this day. Fong Yuan inspected and realized that Immortal Succession Mountain had a few inheritances left. Most of the stone pavilions were empty already. He kept all of these inheritances. He was the owner of the Grotto Heaven now, everything inside was his. These inheritances were no different. However, these inheritances were mostly mortal inheritances, there were only 3 Gu immortal inheritances. Among which, 2 of them did not have any immortal Gu, but they had a few immortal Gu recipes. The last Gu immortal inheritance had 1 immortal Gu left, it was called Bone Spike, it was a bone path offensive Gu worm. After ransacking Immortal Succession Mountain, Fong Yuan looked at the huge world in this place. He Fan Grotto Heaven had countless resources, the map in the True Inheritance had talked about He Fan Grotto Heaven's resource distribution, but after so many years, and after nurturing so many Gu Immortals, the resource map was no longer applicable to its current state. And the brass bell heavenly spirit could not communicate. Thankfully, Fong Yuan had captives. Even though he killed all of the Gu Immortals, he had preserved their souls, right now, all of them were locked up in his immortal aperture. Soul Search. A while later, Fong Yuan knew He Fan Grotto Heaven like the back of his hand. Other than a few areas that ancient desolate beasts and ancient desolate plants were living in, there were some forbidden grounds. These Gu Immortals inside He Fan Grotto Heaven were locals, after tens of generations, how could they know nothing about He Fan Grotto Heaven? In the process of soul searching, Fong Yuan also learned about the inheritances and cultivation experiences of these Gu Immortals. Bloodlight Spirit Suppression. Heaven's Will. Fang Yuan inspected Jing Tuo, Zhou Min, and Feng Jun's souls. He realized their scheme. Fang Yuan was glad that he struck quickly, otherwise, if he waited, these three immortals might have actually succeeded. Chu Du snatched the heavenly crystal eagle nest away, while Fang Yuan had attitude Gu and familiar face. Heaven's Will knew about all these. Most importantly, He Fan Grotto Heaven had absorbed a piece of an immemorial azure heaven fragment. Heaven's Will could look into the grotto heaven. The immortal killer moved blood light spirit suppression that Feng Jun had suddenly created was quite suspicious. Fang Yuan assumed that this was likely Heaven's Will's influence. Thankfully, Fang Yuan took action after getting the heavenly crystal eagle nest. He went to obtain He Fan true inheritance in the shortest time possible. I have to move away all of the resources inside He Fan Grotto Heaven, and put them in my immortal aperture. This place is not safe. As for He Fan Grotto Heaven, I will give it to Chu Du. The value of the Grotto Heaven itself is already 30% of He Fan true inheritance's value. As for what Heaven's Will would do to Chu Du, Fang Yuan could not care less. He had already given the method of self-will Gu to Chu Du. He did not have to worry about Heaven's Will influencing Chu Du's thoughts. In the next few days, Fang Yuan went through a thorough inspection. The entire distribution of living habitats, the cooperation and coexistence between resources, some complemented each other while others restrained each other, these were all precious knowledge that Fang Yuan could learn in order to manage his own immortal aperture. He was lacking in this aspect. In the 500 years of his previous life, he had low aptitude. Blood Path Gu immortals were skilled in fighting, but were not good in immortal aperture management. Especially large immortal apertures, Fang Yuan had no experience in managing them. Not to mention the sovereign immortal aperture. Right now, He Fan Grotto Heaven was like an encyclopedia placed in front of him. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report chapter so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 1133, Ransacking the Entire Grotto Heaven. Chapter 1133, Ransacking the Entire Grotto Heaven. Translator. Atlas Studios. Editor. Atlas Studios. In the next few days, Fang Yuan went around almost the entirety of He Fan Grotto Heaven. His consciousness was covering the surroundings, observing as he researched. Sometimes, Fang Yuan felt that it was as if He Fan was teaching him personally across time and space. There was an incredibly detailed explanation in He Fan's true inheritance. The He Fan Grotto Heaven in front of him was a real-life example. He could interact with and excavate information from it. He could also observe it. If there were any differences, Fang Yuan would soul-search those captive Gu immortals. This made him understand the process and secrets of the prosperity and dwindling of species in a long span of time. He Fan's talent made Fang Yuan feel deep admiration. He had benefited greatly from it. Regarding the development of the sovereign immortal aperture, Fang Yuan now had many new bold ideas. When Fang Yuan was certain that he had already understood the structure of the entirety of He Fan Grotto Heaven, he started to move resources. First were the heavenly crystals. He Fan Grotto Heaven's first forbidden ground was the heavenly crystal storage pool. This pool was built in the sky, it covered an enormous area, and was surrounded in layers of Gu formations. But the heavenly crystals only occupied the small area at the center. The heavenly crystals produced in He Fan Grotto Heaven were light azure in color. Heavenly crystals had different colors depends on where they were produced. Fang Yuan placed this storage pool into mini azure heaven. It is a pity that this storage pool can only produce heavenly crystals in a grotto heaven. My sovereign immortal aperture is only a blessed land, it cannot do anything inside here. However, the light azure heavenly crystals in the storage pool and that heavenly crystal eagle nest should last 5 to 6 years for me. Fang Yuan assessed, with the addition of these crystals, he would have no problems in feeding the upper extreme heavenly eagle. Heavenly crystals were not easy to buy in Treasure Yellow Heaven. The second forbidden area was underground. This was a huge cave. There was stalactites growing in the cave. The most valuable one were the hibiscus stalactites. It was rare in the outside world, but a lot were growing here. Fang Yuan spent some effort, digging out the entire cave and transplanting it into mini southern border. Thankfully, he had pulling mountain immortal Gu, otherwise, this second forbidden area would be hard to deal with. But after I do this, when the stalactites grow, they would need to absorb the earth chi inside the sovereign immortal aperture. It would increase the sovereign immortal aperture's earth chi expenditure. Once in a while, I will need to place down the immortal aperture and replenish earth chi. Other than these natural resources, there were ancient desolate beasts and ancient desolate plants. Among the ancient desolate plants, there was one walking meat tree. This tree was a rare strength path plant. It usually grew in Black Heaven. In order to cultivate it, He Fan specially enclosed a portion of He Fan Grotto Heaven, creating a condition of darkness. Around the walking meat tree, He Fan specially created a habitat that suited its growth. The walking meat tree's branches were very peculiar. They were like soft and thick octopus tentacles. With a light whip, they could send desolate beasts flying. Fang Yuan had once seen one in Starry Sky Grotto Heaven. This was his second encounter, he sighed. He had once wished he could get a walking meat tree, because he could use Eat Strength Immortal Gu to increase his strength path Dao marks. But now, he had the walking meat tree, but Eat Strength Immortal Gu was destroyed. It was truly untimely. Fang Yuan placed the walking meat tree into mini Black Heaven within the sovereign immortal aperture. The sovereign immortal aperture's advantage was starting to show. He Fan had to make meticulous arrangements to plant the walking meat tree. Fang Yuan did not need to do this, because mini Black Heaven's environment was close to the real immemorial Black Heaven. The walking meat tree was very pleased after the relocation. It stretched out its branches comfortably. Because He Fan had specialized methods, Fang Yuan had an easy time relocating these ancient desolate plants. The same went for the other desolate beasts and ancient desolate beasts living in He Fan Grotto Heaven. Using methods in He Fan's true inheritance, Fang Yuan could lure these desolate beasts and ancient desolate beasts into his immortal aperture with no trouble. What was worth mentioning was that among the ancient desolate beasts in He Fan Grotto Heaven, there were 3 remnant heavenly dogs. Unfortunately, Fang Yuan needed dog desolate beasts, not ancient desolate beasts. He needed their feces to feed the rank 6 dog shit luck immortal Gu. But these 3 remnant heavenly dogs were not useless. In the future, if Fang Yuan raised dog shit luck immortal Gu to rank 7, its food would change drastically. At that time, the remnant heavenly dog's feces would be useful. Fang Yuan's relocation was very efficient. In the entire process, the brass bell heavenly spirit followed beside him. Fang Yuan was the Grotto Heaven's owner. The heavenly spirit would cooperate with everything he did without resistance. After half a month, Fang Yuan finally emptied He Fan Grotto Heaven. Even the empty immortal succession mountain was not left alone. Fang Yuan moved it into mini southern border. Originally, there were large numbers of Gu masters and mortals living in He Fan Grotto Heaven. They were all the descendants of He tribe's criminal immortals. Fang Yuan killed all of them, collecting their souls, planning to feed them to Dang Hun Mountain. What made Fang Yuan feel slight regret was, He Fan Grotto Heaven did not have any variant humans. When Grotto Heavens or Blessed Lands reach a certain stage, the Gu immortals would start rearing variant humans inside. Even though He Fan could do this, he did not. Even though there were no variant humans, and most of the common cultivation resources were expended by the Gu immortals inside He Fan Grotto Heaven, Fang Yuan still had immense gains. All of the resources in He Fan Grotto Heaven were placed into the sovereign immortal aperture. From a desolate state, it was starting to gain life. This is a huge breakthrough. If I were to work at it myself, to get the sovereign immortal aperture to this stage of development, I would need 600 years. And that is the best case scenario. Now after taking in He Fan Grotto Heaven's resources, I have directly reached this stage. He Fan Grotto Heaven had existed for a long time. It had accumulated a great amount of resources. After all, this was the accumulation of a rank 8 Gu immortal's wealth. Even though a lot was used up, and it was not at its prime, Fang Yuan still benefited greatly. For example, the sovereign immortal aperture previously was like a pauper. Even the immortal Gu were starving. But now, he had inherited the wealth of a billionaire, he turned into a billionaire instantly. Now, the resources inside the sovereign immortal aperture definitely surpasses most rank 7 Gu immortals in terms of value. Even by the standards of rank 8 Gu immortals, I might barely be able to reach them. Of course, a lot of the resources have just been moved into the sovereign immortal aperture. With a change in environment and a fall in time path Dao marks, their production would greatly reduce, they might even wither and die. The beasts and plants need to adapt to the new environment, and my sovereign immortal aperture also needs to assimilate them slowly. Among which, I can't use some of the resources, I should sell them in exchange for the things I need. Moving all of the resources was just the start. Next, Fang Yuan was going to get busy with his development and management. A few days later, Fang Yuan brought Chu Du into Heifan Grotto Heaven. After getting your letter, I came here immediately. This is Heifan Grotto Heaven. Why is it so barren? Chu Du had just arrived in Heifan Grotto Heaven, he looked around with a surprised and disappointed look. There was almost nothing in Heifan Grotto Heaven. Even the grasslands were dug up by Fang Yuan, it was literally empty. There were no trees as well, of course. And the rivers and pools were all moved into the sovereign immortal aperture using pulling water immortal Gu as well. The scenic Heifan Grotto Heaven had become desolate as ever, when winds blew, sand flew into the air, it was a dismal sight. Chu Du looked at Fang Yuan with a flickering gaze. His expression seemed to be saying, "Brother, isn't your appetite too big? I rushed here to see this." Fang Yuan smiled, pointing at the sky, "Brother Chu, according to our alliance agreement, I will pay you 30% of my gains. Heifan Grotto Heaven is yours now." Chu Du heard this and his expression changed, he looked at Fang Yuan in shock, "Are you serious?" "Of course." Fang Yuan nodded. Chu Du was greatly enticed. Even though the resources inside the Grotto Heaven were taken by Fang Yuan, this was still a Grotto Heaven. Resources and Grotto Heaven were like eggs and the chicken respectively. Fang Yuan took the eggs, he left the chicken to Chu Du. Chu Du squinted, his eyes were flickering with sharp light. He could not reject it. The reason? Because controlling this Grotto Heaven was an immense help to Chu Du's cultivation. Even though Chu Du also had an immortal aperture, it was only a blessed land, be it time path or space path resources, they could not compare to a Grotto Heaven. And this was Heifan's Grotto Heaven. Chu Du's blessed land also had lots of cultivation resources, but it was not safe to place his resources there. Because of calamities and tribulations. Calamities and tribulations would destroy the immortal aperture's resources when targeting the Gu immortals as well. Chu Du had rank 7 cultivation level, he had passed many calamities and tribulations, he knew the trouble and pain of getting his resources destroyed by calamities and tribulations. He did not have the great strength true martial physique, his blessed land space was limited. It was unlike Fang Yuan's sovereign immortal aperture, it was too big, even after taking in Heifan's resources, there was still a lot of space left. Fang Yuan could freely choose a place inside it with no resources to undergo his tribulation, but Chu Du could not. Heifan Grotto Heaven has no calamities and tribulations, because this immortal aperture has absorbed a fragment of immemorial azure heaven. I can place my resources inside here, of course, there are few strength path Dao marks here, I will need to decide this carefully in the future. Chu Du assessed. Lu Guanyi handed over Heifan Grotto Heaven to me, other than completing our agreement, it is also because this Grotto Heaven itself is a problem. Chu Du was not stupid, he quickly realized, he had taken the heavenly crystal eagle nest, everyone knew that Heifan true inheritance was in his hands. In truth, the one who obtained Heifan's true inheritance was Fang Yuan. Except that he was in the background, while Chu Du occupied the Grotto Heaven. If anything happened in the future, Fang Yuan would not be in trouble, but Chu Du would. Even if Heavenly Lord Baizu attacks, I will take over Heifan Grotto Heaven. How can I, the great domination immortal, be afraid of a small risk? Thinking of this, Chu Du spoke, agreeing. Good, as expected of the domination immortal. Fang Yuan clapped, praising. But next, when handing over He Fan Grotto Heaven, there was a tiny problem. The brass bell heavenly spirit was unwilling to. It was because Chu Du did not have He tribe's bloodline. Ignorant thing. Fang Yuan smiled sinisterly, destroying the defenseless brass bell heavenly spirit with one hit. The problem was immediately solved. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report chapter so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 1134, Battling Falling Star Hound. Chapter 1134, Battling Falling Star Hound. Translator. Atlas Studios. Editor. Atlas Studios. After the transaction, He Fan Grotto Heaven changed owners. Even though Chu Du asked him to stay, Fang Yuan was insistent on leaving. He had stayed in He Fan Grotto Heaven for too long. Fang Yuan had to start preparing for his fourth earthly calamity. Of course, before leaving, he used the immortal killer move 100 Years Harmony to create a new alliance agreement with Chu Du. Fang Yuan left quickly. Chu Du was left behind, feeling a huge headache looking at the barren He Fan Grotto Heaven. Traveling back, he returned to Xianxia Blessed Land. Oh, look, Fang Yuan is back. A hairy man Gu immortal who was inside Xianxia Blessed Land saw Fang Yuan who was flying in the sky. Does it matter if he is back? That's right, there is no difference if Xianxia sect has him or not. He is a human Gu immortal after all, he is not one of us. Ignore him, let's continue planning on how to take down that falling star hound. Soon, these hairy man Gu immortals lowered their heads, continuing to discuss their tactic. Fang Yuan looked down, his gaze sweeping past these hairy man Gu immortals. Even though they were far away, Fang Yuan had investigative methods, he heard what they were saying. At once, Fang Yuan's gaze turned eerie. He had spent a lot of time searching for He Fan's true inheritance, the fourth earthly calamity was close. Fang Yuan was planning to undergo this earthly calamity himself. Even though getting Chu Du's help was safer, reckless savage's true meaning would also be split. Fang Yuan would definitely want to take the benefits for himself if possible. Only when he is unable to do so would he think of other ways. And just now, he obtained He Fan's true inheritance, his strength rose greatly, he was confident in dealing with the fourth earthly calamity alone. But to undergo tribulation, I need Xianxia sect's immortal tribulation tempering aperture, I will need to borrow immortal Gu from Xianxia Land Spirit. With my current relationship with Xianxia Land Spirit, he will not lend it to me, unless I provide a huge gain like selling Dang Hun Mountain. Looking at it, I should use my remaining time to complete that sect mission of taking down the falling star hound. Firstly, it can improve our relationship, secondly, I can gain a lot of sect contribution points to pay for borrowing Gu. Fang Yuan did not return to his cloud city, he flew straight to the first cloud city. There, he met with Xianxia Land Spirit. Oh, you still remembered to come back. Xianxia Land Spirit did not speak in a pleasant tone, he had a cold attitude. Fang Yuan sighed, he showed a bitter expression, please understand, First Supreme Elder, I had my reasons. Earlier, I was not ignoring it, I simply had no time or effort. After going out this time, I resolved my crisis. The moment I returned, I heard the Supreme Elders taking down the falling star hound, I rushed here to get this mission from you, First Supreme Elder, at the first moment. Oh. Xianxia Land Spirit heard this and stopped frowning, this means you are going to do it? Fang Yuan smiled bitterly again, I have been wanting to accept the mission, I am a member of Xianxia sect after all. But the circumstances did not allow me to, I had no choice. Now that I can spare the effort, I want to do something for the sect. His acting skills with attitude Gu immediately took effect, Xianxia Land Spirit felt that Fang Yuan was speaking the truth, he was sincere and apologetic. Xianxia Land Spirit's expression soothed, he was about to agree, but he quickly changed his words, it will be troublesome if you want to accept this mission. Earlier, 12th Hair and the rest have already coordinated, they are going to strike. Last time, even though they failed, they had gained great experience, both sides had suffered a loss. They are likely going to succeed now. If you want to take this mission, regardless of whether you succeed, you will conflict with them first. Fang Yuan was only an outsider, 12th Hair, and the rest were true Hairy Man Gu immortals. They were part of the Hairy Men. Xianxia Lan's spirit naturally would side with 12th Hair and the rest. Fang Yuan nodded, so that's it. How about this, let them take the mission first, if they cannot complete it, I will help out, is that okay? Xianxia Lan's spirit thought about it, nodding, okay. Fang Yuan said again, I hope First Supreme Elder can announce this. Xianxia Lan's spirit did as he said. Once he announced it, there was a commotion in Xianxia sect. That Fang Yuan is finally going to fight? Humph, he sees that we are succeeding, so he wants to attempt it. Despicable scoundrel. Disregarding the fact that he is despicable, the reward for taking down the falling star hound has risen to over 1,000. Whoever completes it will gain the greatest benefit. O 12th, you must succeed, don't let that Fang Yuan take advantage. The Hairy Man Gu immortals had mutual animosity towards him. 12th Hair nodded, subconsciously clenching his fists, thinking, I must succeed, we prepared amply, I will not let everyone down. His previous fight gave the Hairy Men lots of confidence. 12th Hair was prepared to attack in 2 days' time. But because of this matter, he decided to be more safe, and prepare himself better. 7 days later, Fang Yuan received notification that 12th Hair and the rest were about to attack. He went uninvited, gathering with 12th Hair and the rest. Elder Fang Yuan. 6th Hair went ahead and spoke to Fang Yuan in a strange tone. His true identity was Shadow Sect Spy, but even if Fang Yuan exposed him, nobody would believe it. Because he had made a deal with Fang Yuan, they were in the same boat, he was fearless. Last time, he was ordered to represent Wu Xia in transacting with Fang Yuan. Fang Yuan had the upper hand, he had suffered immensely. Fang Yuan did not go and challenge the falling star hound. 6th Hair managed to stir up the Hairy Men and direct their attention to it, causing their relationship with Fang Yuan to worsen. Elder Fang Yuan, I know why you are here, but this time, you will be disappointed. 12th Hair walked forward, puffing his chest, he was filled with confidence. He spoke in a normal tone, he was frank and upright unlike the underhanded 6th Hair. Fang Yuan looked at 12th Hair, he saw that this Hairy Man Gu immortal had evidently changed. He was more confident and secure than before. Fang Yuan assessed, 12th Hair cultivates refinement path along with enslavement path. This time, to deal with the falling star hound, he had been the leader. He was heavily injured before and had to rest in bed for some time. After these obstacles, he has improved drastically, his mental state has also become much more developed. Thinking of this, Fang Yuan smiled as he replied, then I will await Brother 12th's victory. Humph, hypocrite. He seems to have given up on the surface, but he must be anxious on the inside, right? Hee hee. The other Hairy Man Gu immortals could not stand Fang Yuan's words, they were muttering. Fang Yuan heard their words and ignored it. The group was standing in the center of the main formation. The Hairy Men were standing close together, Fang Yuan was the only outcast. Stay alert, I am about to activate the Gu formation. 12th Hair said, he took a glance at Fang Yuan, with one more person, the immortal essence expenditure is definitely going to be higher. The Hairy Man Gu immortals had calm expressions, they had already used this teleportation Gu formation many times, they were used to it. The Gu formation gradually activated, it gave off dazzling lights. Fang Yuan watched silently. The teleportation sub-formation in Tai Chiu was placed by him, Fang Yuan had returned to Xianxia Blessed Land using the teleportation Gu formation. When he used it alone, it was easy, but he could see that these Hairy Man Gu immortals had much more trouble in activating it. 12th Hair continued to expend immortal essence, after a long while, the Gu formation finally activated. Dazzling lights blinded everyone's vision, with a huge mystical force, it reacted. In the blink of an eye, the immortals looked around and realized they were in Tai Chiu. Fang Yuan turned around, the huge elephant corpse was indeed behind him. The immortal essence expenditure did not increase by a lot. It seems that Fang Yuan does not have a deep Dao mark foundation. He is probably more experienced than us in battle techniques only. 12th Hair glanced at Fang Yuan, showing some disdain in his gaze. We can only win this time, we cannot lose. Let's go. 12th Hair waved, shouting loudly. The hairy man Gu immortals responded, they had high morale. They started their journey, Fang Yuan tailed behind them. In order to not cause conflicts, Fang Yuan purposely stayed behind, not getting close to these hairy man Gu immortals. Before they advanced by a lot, Fang Yuan found his target. A falling star hound that has not reached maturity. Fang Yuan was slightly surprised, he saw that the hairy man Gu immortals were charging towards it. Dog, we will definitely beat you. 12th Hair shouted loudly, battle intent surging in him. The falling star hound howled, it lowered his body as its hill-like body burst forward with incredible speed. The hairy man Gu immortals were scattered by this attack. 12th Hair was in a very difficult state, he shouted in anger, beast, you dare to sneak attack us. Come, let's battle for 300 rounds. Saying this, 12th Hair clapped his hands as a blue light expanded from his hands, forming a blue lake in the sky. From the lake, water spewed out, as 3 desolate beasts came out from the bottom of the lake. 1 yak, 1 tiger, and 1 bear. It was a chestnut yak, a golden white tiger, and a diamond bear. The 3 desolate beasts went towards the falling star hound, engaging in an intense battle on the giant grass. This was a deep area of Tai Chiu, the giant grass was extremely tall, even the falling star hound and diamond bear was not as tall as the strands of giant grass. 12th Hair controlled the 3 desolate beasts, drawing the falling star hound's attention. The other hairy man Gu immortals were hiding in the giant grass, attacking the falling star hound from a distance. Fang Yuan watched from an even greater distance. He could evidently see many traces of intense battle in this battlefield. The hairy man Gu immortals' performance was quite impressive. They were skillful and had improved from earlier. Even though it was still quite bad, their improvement was very apparent. The falling star hound had not reached maturity, but it could fight with these hairy man Gu immortals evenly. Fang Yuan smiled, looking at the sky. He thought to himself, I am here, heaven's will, how will you deal with me this time? If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know to report chapter so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 1135, Don't be a disturbance. Chapter 1135, Don't be a disturbance. Translator. Atlas Studios. Editor. Atlas Studios. Boom. With a loud boom, the falling star hound crashed into the diamond bear. The diamond bear was only a desolate beast, but it had a robust body, it blocked the falling star hound like a wall. It was hit by the falling star hound, it moved back 5 or 6 steps, but it still stood firmly. The falling star hound moved back by a huge step, its head was spinning. It shook his head, clearing its mind. During this period of time, 5 or 6 killer moves shot out from the giant grass, impacting on the falling star hound's body. The falling star hound cried out in pain, its flesh was cut open from the attacks. Fang Yuan watched coldly from the side. It seems that not just 12th Hair, the other hairy man Gu immortals have also learned to use their immortal killer moves. But these immortal killer moves mostly only have 1 core immortal Gu, they are at rank 6 level. After the falling star hound was attacked for a long time, even though its flesh was torn open, it was only lightly injured. It was an ancient desolate beast, even as an infant which had not reached maturity, it still had incredible defense and recovery abilities. I cannot fail this time, Fang Yuan will see me as a joke. 12th Hair concentrated, he was filled with unprecedented determination. The 3 desolate beasts seemed to be able to sense their master's feelings, they were filled with battle intent. Under 12th Hair's manipulation, the diamond bear with the sturdiest body resisted attacks, while the golden white tiger assisted it. As for the chestnut yak, even though it was very weak, it could cause some interferences on the side. 12th Hair is directing the desolate beasts, he seems to be having an easy time. But this situation is quite stagnant, the falling star hound is attacking fiercely, he has not sent out a fourth desolate beast yet. I am afraid he only has 3 desolate beasts after all. Fang Yuan calmly analyzed. He even had to use a desolate beast like the chestnut yak. Fang Yuan's guess was very likely to be true. After Treasure Yellow Heaven opened, 12th Hare bought a diamond bear and a golden white tiger. But his choice is quite questionable, the diamond bear itself is sufficient. Golden white tiger is a metal path desolate beast with strong defenses as well, he might as well get a flying desolate beast, it would pose a greater threat. That way, the falling star hound would be distracted more and act more warily, it would have weaker attacks when trying to defend itself. Fang Yuan was thinking about this, when 12th Hare made a mistake, the diamond bear left a gap open after moving away. Damn it! 12th Hare stared with furious eyes, he immediately moved the chestnut yak to fill the gap. You have to hang on. 12th Hare bellowed in his mind. The falling star hound growled, slamming the chestnut yak away. Next, the falling star hound broke away from the encirclement and charged into the grass. As a result, the hairy man Gu immortals hiding in the grass screamed in terror. Quick, use that move. Seeing that he was about to be hit by the falling star hound, an unlucky hairy man Gu immortal shouted in fear. Swoosh! At the next moment, he vanished on the spot, appearing beside another hairy man 1,000 steps away from him. Thanks. You acted quickly, otherwise, I would have died. The hairy man Gu immortal who was saved still felt lingering fear. The one who saved him was 6th Hare. He patted the hairy man Gu immortal's shoulder. Relax, don't forget the outsider is here, don't make our Xianxia sect lose face. Even now, he was still trying to sow discord. The hairy man Gu immortal who was saved quickly concealed his expression, but his body was still shaking slightly. Fang Yuan snorted coldly, killing intent was hidden in his gaze as he looked at 6th Hare. I will slaughter this fellow one day. But we are members of Xianxia sect now, the Information Path Alliance agreement prevents us from killing each other. So to kill him, I need to get rid of this Xianxia sect alliance agreement secretly first. Fang Yuan wanted to make use of Xianxia sect's strength, 6th Hare was a severe obstacle. 6th Hare played a big role in causing Fang Yuan and Xianxia sect's relationship to turn so sour. In Xianxia sect, Fang Yuan and 6th Hare both had ulterior motives. Their relationship was not simple either. Because they had made transactions, they had a hold on each other. Fang Yuan had Xianxia sect's alliance agreement, he could not do things that harmed Xianxia sect. Of course, he could think and talk about them. 6th Hare was a member of Xianxia sect, because of this, if 6th Hare was in fatal danger, Fang Yuan had to save him. Of course, it depended on the situation. If 6th Hare tried to suicidally put himself in danger and lure an ancient desolate beast in order to entrap Fang Yuan, he would not have to save him in that situation. Since Fang Yuan joined Xianxia sect and went under an alliance agreement, he was not going to be restricted so easily. And 6th Hare only wanted to get rid of Fang Yuan and obtain his body. He had insufficient strength, and Fang Yuan had a hold on him, because of Shadow Sect's plan, he was the final spy left in Xianxia blessed land, he had to stay hidden. Both sides had their own reservations, they were wary of each other. As if he had sensed Fang Yuan's gaze, 6th Hare turned around and smiled sinisterly. He was a split soul of spectral soul, he had rich battle experience. This was why he could save the hairy man Gu immortal before anyone else reacted. He was trying to unite the hairy man Gu immortals and ostracize Fang Yuan, limiting his growth. The battle continued. The falling star hound did not kill the hairy man Gu immortal, the diamond bear and golden white tiger quickly diverted it. Soon, the chestnut yak arrived as well, forming an encirclement again. The hairy man Gu immortals also continued their long-range attacks. But 12th Hare continued to make flaws in the battle due to unexpected circumstances, even though he was performing above his usual abilities. After getting out of the encirclement, the falling star hound attempted to kill the other hairy man Gu immortals. But these hairy man Gu immortals seemed to have the same immortal killer move. Whenever one was targeted, the rest would be able to teleport them away to another comrade's side. This immortal killer move is quite interesting. Fang Yuan watched silently. He subconsciously placed himself in the falling star hound's position. What would he do to resolve the killer move? Soon, Fang Yuan had an answer. It was difficult to resolve this killer move. Because with just this little bit of information, he could not analyze anything. He did not even know the name of the killer move. In this short period of time, the killer move did not seem to have any flaws. Even if I cannot break it, it is very easy to kill these hairy man Gu immortals. My movement speed far exceeds them, sword marks targeting death and dark assassination can cause many deaths to them already. In fact, just flying sword immortal Gu alone can kill them. Of course, sixth hair is hiding his strength, that is another issue. The actual situation would depend on how the fight develops. I am about to succeed. This time, I will truly defeat the falling star hound. 12th hair got more and more excited, the light of victory could be seen in his eyes. This time, he performed better than usual. 7 to 8 hairy man Gu immortals along with 3 desolate beasts were fighting against an infant falling star hound. With the proper tactics, victory was favoring these hairy man Gu immortals. Fang Yuan, are you seeing this? Even without you, we can take down the falling star hound and obtain true victory. 12th hair cried out in his mind. He loved his home, he was extremely loyal to Xianxia sect. Earlier, when Xianxia sect was facing trouble with developing in Taichou, Fang Yuan watched on the side. 12th hair had a lot of grudge towards Fang Yuan. When he was injured and bedridden, Fang Yuan went to visit him, but he did not even want to meet. He sent a mortal Gu master to reject Fang Yuan's entry into the Cloud City. This victory had incredible meaning for him. Being able to obtain victory in front of Fang Yuan, 12th hair felt great pride and joy. As time passed, the battle situation was becoming obvious. Falling Star Hound was gradually unable to hold on. The hairy man Gu immortals felt that their pressure was lifting. They unavoidably became excited, some of them could even see victory ahead, their eyes were red from excitement, they were trembling slightly. It was not easy. With their horrible battle strength, fighting against the falling star hound resulted in repeated setbacks. They had put in so much blood and sweat, coming up with a tactic to deal with the falling star hound, they had spent countless sleepless nights practicing, they were finally going to succeed today. Even though they were tired and their immortal essence was depleted, the hairy man Gu immortals felt revitalized, they were having an adrenaline rush. Kill this dog. That's right, tear its skin and hang it above the cloud cities, let everyone see our victory. Haha, we finally defeated it. Fang Yuan, are you seeing this? I know you are unwilling, but so what? Today, we will teach you a lesson, the hairy man Gu immortals are not powerless. Xianxia sect belongs to us hairy men, it is not for a human like you. The hairy man Gu immortals shouted and screamed in excitement. Fang Yuan smiled plainly, as if he did not hear them. His attitude made the hairy man Gu immortals disappointed, some of them even felt disgust and anger. He is just concealing his emotions, what can he do? A hairy man Gu immortal sneered. However, a change occurred right at this moment. An eagle hound suddenly appeared in the center of the battlefield, with one swipe of its claws, the diamond bear fell. With one peck from its beak, Chestnut Yak went blind. With a flap of its wings, intense winds blew, the golden white tiger flew back by dozens of steps. The falling star hound curled up into a ball, whimpering in fear. Where did this ancient desolate beast come from? The hairy man Gu immortals were shocked. Not just one. Soon, 5 eagle hounds appeared from the grass, and 3 were flying in the sky. Out of nowhere, eagle hounds had completely encircled the hairy man Gu immortals. How did this happen? 12th hair's pupils shrunk to pin size, he was completely stunned. He had just experienced going from heaven to hell. A moment ago, he was still a high and mighty victor, at the next moment, his life was on the line, this was a desperate situation. Oh! Heaven's will, this is your ambush incredible indeed. Fang Yuan laughed in his mind. The eagle hounds did not make a noise, while the hairy man Gu immortals were shocked beyond words, there was silence. Oh 12th hair, it seems that you have all failed. According to our earlier agreement, it is time for me to act. Amidst the silence, Fang Yuan's plain words could be heard. For some reason, 12th hair felt his heart jump, intense rage was burning inside him. He screamed at Fang Yuan, are you making a mistake? What are you talking about? Open your damned eyes and see the situation we are in, okay? Fang Yuan's lips curled slightly. Bam! A strength path giant hand appeared out of nowhere, it slammed the eagle hound closest to Fang Yuan to the ground. Dust and smoke rose. The eagle hound's attention was drawn away, towards Fang Yuan. They were wary of this strong enemy. Within the dust cloud, Fang Yuan's voice could be heard. All right, I will accept this present. Can everyone please go far away, don't be a disturbance to me. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report chapter so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 1136, Eagle Hounds. Chapter 1136, Eagle Hounds. Translator. Atlas Studios. Editor. Atlas Studios. Eagle Hounds. They had the body of a wolf and head of an eagle, with a pair of eagle wings on their backs. Their head, neck and wings were covered in black feathers, while their canine bodies and forelimbs were covered in gray wolf fur. The Dao marks on their bodies were mostly of dark path. This was a rather special beast. Normal desolate beasts, ancient desolate beasts and so on reproduced through males and females mating. Eagle hounds, however, were different. The reproduction of eagle hound was through infection. The poison of an eagle hound could influence any species of dog or eagle. When this influence reached a certain degree, the dog or eagle beast infected with the eagle hound's poison would gradually transform into an eagle hound. As a result, the individual strength of eagle hounds varied greatly. Some eagle hounds were transformed from desolate beasts, so they would be desolate beast level. Some transformed from ancient desolate beasts, thus would be ancient eagle hounds. Immemorial eagle hounds were rarely seen, even in white heaven and black heaven. Everything was clear. The moment the first eagle hound appeared, Fang Yuan had already realized how the falling star hound and these eagle hounds were related. This group of eagle hounds had been eyeing this falling star hound. It was thrown down from the sky and confined in Taichou to grow. When the falling star hound matured, it would be a true ancient desolate beast. At that time, the eagle hound group would use poison to turn this falling star hound into an ancient eagle hound. As for why this falling star hound was roaming near the teleportation Gu formation, the answer was clear: heaven's will. 2 ancient eagle hounds, while the rest are all desolate beast eagle hounds. Fang Yuan's gaze coldly focused on the 2 ancient desolate beasts. He did not sense auras of immortal Gu on the eagle hounds. This gave him even greater assurance in this battle. Having and not having immortal Gu would lead to Fang Yuan adopting 2 completely different battle tactics. The eagle hound was killed in 1 strike. It has not died, it is only unconscious. What was that move just now? It was like a huge hand. The hairy man Gu immortals reacted only now, and they were extremely shocked. Just now, the eagle hound that was beaten unconscious by 1 giant hand was naturally a desolate beast level. Strength path giant hand had rank 7 battle strength, creating such an outcome was not strange. If it were against an ancient eagle hound, however, it would be a different result. 12th hair had never seen Fang Yuan fight seriously. He had always thought the battle strength Fang Yuan showed when instructing him was Fang Yuan's true strength. 12th hair forcibly calmed down, thinking, although Fang Yuan beat 1 eagle hound unconscious, there are still a lot more remaining. Even if he is powerful, what can just 1 person do? This battle bodes ill, it is better to retreat. Ah! Just as he was thinking of this, 12th hair suddenly could not help crying out in shock. Fang Yuan's confrontation with the eagle hound group lasted a very short time. Almost the next instant after beating the eagle hound unconscious, he began his attack. Sword escape immortal Gu. Whoosh! Fang Yuan left behind an afterimage on his original spot. Within an instant, Fang Yuan had penetrated from the edge of the battlefield into the center. What level of speed is this? The hairy man Gu immortals were shocked. Even Sixth Hair's pupils shrunk, he gritted his teeth. He guessed Fang Yuan used sword escape immortal Gu, this was Bo Qing's immortal Gu. Fang Yuan floated in the air, looking down at the giant beast below. This was an ancient eagle hound. When it had just appeared, it had knocked down the diamond bear, sent the golden white tiger flying and pecked the chestnut yak blind. This ancient eagle hound was stepping on the diamond bear, not letting it budge. The infant falling star hound behind it was curled up into a ball, shivering. He was close to it. The distance between Fang Yuan and this ancient eagle hound was less than 100 steps. Images of each other were clearly reflected in both their eyes. Fang Yuan suddenly disappeared and appeared right before the eagle hound's eyes, giving it a scare and causing it to take a step back subconsciously. But soon, its fierce nature was agitated, as it opened its beak wide and screeched furiously. Its wings flapped rapidly and energy transferred from its rear limbs, as it charged ferociously at Fang Yuan. Fang Yuan sneered, shouting, "Beast, lie down." Boom! A strength path giant hand appeared and descended from the sky, slamming on the ground like a jar lid. The giant hand collided with the ancient eagle hound. The ancient eagle hound was full of ferocity, but was still unable to match the giant hand's power as it was pushed down. The giant hand also was sent back from the collision. But soon, under Fang Yuan's control and replenishment, the giant hand once again pushed down fiercely, as if it was bringing down a storm. The giant hand struck the ancient eagle hound's head, immediately causing it to bow down. Its four limbs bent exaggeratedly and its claws that were fiercely supporting its body left 4 pits on the ground. The strength path giant hand was again flung up a distance from the vibration of the clash, thinning during the process. But the next moment, the giant hand once again condensed as it slammed down. The ancient eagle hound refused to give in and lifted its head, but at the next moment it saw the giant hand covering the entirety of its vision. Boom! There was a huge sound as the ancient eagle hound's head was fiercely slammed down to the ground. The thick and sharp eagle beak was firmly embedded into the ground. Its feathers chaotically flew in the air, while its 4 limbs also sunk into the ground. The ancient eagle hound fell into an extremely furious state. When had it ever received such humiliation? It wanted to strike back, energy flowed through its limbs, its muscles bulged and the next moment, it was about to lift up its head. Boom! The giant hand was quicker, however, slamming down on its head and back. The eaglehound's skeleton gave fracturing sounds at the extremely heavy burden. Its head was shaking intensely and it was seeing stars. The strength it had accumulated just moments ago completely dissipated. But Fang Yuan's momentum was unforgiving. Bang bang bang, another 3 slams, and this ancient eagle hound was almost completely buried into the ground. It was motionless, the surrounding soil was gradually turning red from the blood. The hairy man Gu immortals were all struck speechless. After Fang Yuan had made a desolate beast eagle hound faint, he charged into the center of the eagle hounds without being afraid of the enemy's numerical advantage. Facing the ancient eagle hound, he sent out 10 or so giant hands and struck it to death like slamming bread dough. The hairy man Gu immortals had never seen such a terrifying display, and were extremely frightened. In fact, not only the hairy man Gu immortals, even the other eagle hounds were dazed. By the time they reacted, one of their leaders had been wiped out. Deathly silence hung in the air, with not even the sound of wind. Under everyone's gazes, Fang Yuan slowly lifted his head and gazed at the sky. There were quite a few eagle hounds hovering in the air, among them was the second ancient desolate beast. "It's your turn now." Fang Yuan's tone was light, as he charged towards the sky the very next moment. The eagle hounds in the sky immediately let out ear-piercing cries, breaking up in an uproar as they retreated in every direction. 12th Hair and the group still had their mouths wide open as they looked at Fang Yuan charging to the sky, driving the eagle hounds away like they were sparrows or pigeons. Were these still eagle hounds? A mighty ancient desolate beast, where is your imposing might? 12th Hair felt like he was in a dream. Pursuing good fortune and avoiding disaster, protecting oneself and seeking long life was every living being's instinct. Wild beasts pushing aside the weak and fearing the strong was also normal. With the eagle hounds dispersing, Fang Yuan could do nothing. In terms of speed, eagle hounds were outstanding, regardless of whether they were desolate beasts or ancient desolate beasts. Fang Yuan's gaze continued to stare at that ancient eagle hound. "Will you be able to escape?" As Fang Yuan mumbled, he suddenly sped up. The next instant, his figure appeared behind the ancient eagle hound. Myriad self first style, giant hand. The giant hand slammed down with such a loud sound, the hairy men shivered and the eagle hounds felt their hair standing on end. The hairy men saw that ancient eagle hound being slammed down from the air by Fang Yuan like a ball, colliding heavily with the ground. Sword escape immortal Gu combined with giant hand gave an outstanding result. Strength path giant hand's speed was rather slow. If it struck out from afar towards the eagle hound, this eagle hound would probably be able to escape before it reached it. But Fang Yuan personally moved, using his speed to make up for this weakness of the giant hand. Of course, this battle tactic also had a weakness: it could easily make Fang Yuan fall into a dangerous situation. So, Fang Yuan had activated Bloodstained Conqueror's robe before he used this tactic. There was also another condition: Fang Yuan did not sense any wild immortal Gu on these two ancient eagle hounds. If there were wild immortal Gu, without probing out the details, Fang Yuan would not use this battle tactic. Giant grass grew all over Tai Chiu. The eagle hound's fall was greatly mitigated by these strands of grass. Even though ancient eagle hounds specialized in speed, they were all of ancient desolate level, and had sturdy bodies. Fang Yuan would not be able to kill it without using 10 or so strength path giant hands. However, just as Fang Yuan was about to take the chance to chase it, his expression suddenly changed. In his eyes flashed a scene of the future. While he charged down, suddenly a third ancient eagle hound appeared and ambushed him. Fang Yuan was caught unprepared and was clawed fiercely by the wolf claws, smashing to the ground. Blood flowed out of his 7 orifices and all his bones were fractured. His bloodstained conqueror's robe was broken and even blood asset immortal Gu was injured, unable to be used again. The image flashed in an instant, however Fang Yuan fully trusted it. Because this was the result of his pre-activated immortal killer move, 3 breaths future vision. It was a time path investigative killer move from He Fan True Inheritance, 3 breaths future vision, used after immortal Gu as the core and could allow the Gu immortal to see their future situation. And this future situation would manifest within 3 breaths of time. Fang Yuan did not lose his head, instead his eyes shined with satisfaction. Sure enough, Heaven's will's arrangement wouldn't be so simple, there was actually an ambush. My bloodstained conqueror's robe is an immortal level defensive move, but its core immortal Gu is only the rank 6 blood asset. It is still slightly weak when facing an ancient desolate beast. Since he knew about the ambush naturally would be useless. Sword marks targeting death. Fang Yuan suddenly shot out sharp sword light towards a certain location in the air. Right as the hairy man Gu immortals were feeling puzzled, sword marks targeting death struck that hidden ancient eagle hound. Ding! There was a sharp and clear sound. The ancient eagle hound was intercepted by sword marks targeting death. The hairy man Gu immortals shouted in shock. There was actually a third ancient eagle hound hiding in ambush. Unimaginable. If it had sneak attacked any of us hairy man Gu immortals, it would probably have gotten its way. Fang Yuan could actually sense it. Fang Yuan slightly raised his eyebrows, staring at the third ancient eagle hound which had suffered no damage. Being able to block sword marks targeting death, this ancient eagle hound seems to have wild immortal Gu on it. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report chapter so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 1137, Transformation Path Gu Immortal. Chapter 1137, Transformation Path Gu Immortal. Translator: Atlas Studios. Editor: Atlas Studios. The third ancient eagle hound had immortal Gu. If not for this, how could it block Fang Yuan's immortal killer move, sword marks targeting death? Fang Yuan's heart burned with eagerness. Times had changed. If it were before he inherited He Fan's true inheritance, Fang Yuan would have avoided this eagle group, but now, with his strength having increased sharply, his mindset had changed. He intended to take down all these eagle hounds. My sovereign immortal aperture is very big. Fang Yuan's lips curled up. As for the wild immortal Gu on the ancient eagle hound, I will take it as well. Being able to block sword marks targeting death, let me see what kind of exemplary defensive immortal Gu it is. In an instant, thoughts surged in Fang Yuan's mind. He determined his battle tactics. Blood Path Killer moves like Blood Torrent and so on were not suitable to be used in front of the Hairy Man Gu Immortals. These Hairy Man Gu Immortals could connect to treasure Yellow Heaven and knew the terror of Blood Path. They were not like that group of ignorant Gu Immortals in He Fan Grotto Heaven. Although he could use He Fan True Inheritance's immortal killer moves, he had to be prudent. After all, he still had not practiced them to proficiency. Rashly using them could likely result in failure and cause backlash. Therefore, Fang Yuan clapped, choosing his personal creation, which was also the offensive method he was most skilled in. Convergence of Enslavement and Strength Path, Miri itself. At the next instant, large amounts of Strength Path phantoms filled the sky. Ah! The Hairy Man Gu Immortals were all struck speechless. Sixth Hair also had a stupefied look, but inwardly was not surprised. He already knew about Miri itself, this was old news. But soon, Sixth Hair's pupils shrunk as he blurted out, he vanished. In his perception, Fang Yuan had suddenly vanished, and only the dense group of Strength Path phantoms remained in the sky. Fang Yuan had used Familiar Face to disguise himself as an ordinary Strength Path phantom, mixing in within the Myriad Self Army. Charge! The Myriad Self Army cried out together and like a torrent falling from the sky, charged towards the third Eagle Hound. The Eagle Hound's eyes flashed with sharp light, suddenly the wings on its back flapped, bringing forth a layer of dark winged shadows. Its speed increased sharply, and it actually retreated. This response was somewhat out of Fang Yuan's expectations. Clearly, this Eagle Hound had a second wild immortal Gu. That layer of winged shadows was the effect of that immortal Gu. It actually has another wild immortal Gu. The desire in Fang Yuan intensified. He commanded the Myriad Self Army to continue charging towards the ancient Eagle Hound. Along the way, the Strength Path phantoms suddenly dispersed, like a blooming flower, or a giant beast's maw, as they pounced at the ancient Eagle Hound. The ancient Eagle Hound gave a sharp cry, as it suddenly rose up. It was actually retreating again. Fang Yuan had already calculated its retreat routes. The Myriad Self Army, which had charged ahead like a flood dragon with its mouth open, swung its tail. The Strength Path phantoms at the rear pounced at the ancient Eagle Hound. The ancient Eagle Hound that was retreating backwards suddenly leaned towards the right, its wings flapped and its whole body drew an inclining arc through the sky, perfectly dodging the Myriad Self Army's offensive route. The Hairy Man Gu Immortals were in an agitated state watching all these moves. Compared to the Eagle Hound, they naturally wanted Fang Yuan to win. But this third ancient Eagle Hound seemed to be extremely cunning. Fang Yuan had encircled it several times but was still unable to succeed. The ancient Eagle Hound's speed is much faster than these Fang Yuan's. How could they catch up to it? 12th Hair attentively observed, feeling dejected as Fang Yuan continued to make no progress. 6th Hair however had a bright gaze, thinking, Fang Yuan's enslavement path attainment seems to have increased slightly. It is going to end soon. This ancient Eagle Hound might be fast, but it is concerned about the other Eagle Hounds, and has only been flying around the battlefield. It will soon be captured by Fang Yuan. A battlefield formed in the sky. Almost all the Eagle Hounds flew up and were battling with the Myriad Self Army. Fang Yuan's focus was completely on the third ancient Eagle Hound. There is something odd about this ancient Eagle Hound. Fang Yuan had discovered that the other Eagle Hounds could be easily dealt with. As long as he used a few Strength Path phantoms, the Eagle Hounds could be pinned down. Only this third ancient Eagle Hound was rather crafty and could see through the tactics of the Myriad Self Army. it was able to retreat and advance at will. Finally, Fang Yuan was able to succeed. Several groups of the myriad self-army besieged the third eagle hound from the front, back, above and below. He actually surrounded it. 12th Hare and the group cried out in joy. The ancient eagle hound let out a sharp screech, as it flapped its wings wildly and clawed everywhere, destroying many of the strength path phantoms. Within just a few moments of being encircled, the ancient eagle hound seemed to be about to break through the siege. But this did not matter. Because Fang Yuan's true body, hidden among the strength path phantoms, had already approached the ancient eagle hound. When he was close enough, he decisively used his sword path killer move, Dark Assassination. This killer move's specialty was that no immortal Gu aura would leak out when it was activated. It was extremely stealthy. The ancient eagle hound let out a miserable shriek as it was struck by Fang Yuan. A bloody hole appeared on its neck, blood spurted out like a fountain. But in the blink of an eye, the blood lessened, and the bloody hole disappeared. The injury had healed and feathers grew once again on the surface. At the same moment, the ancient eagle hound turned berserk. Its whole body was covered by a layer of dark shadows. Its speed increased by multiple times as it attacked wildly, bringing forth afterimages of its wings and claws. Crash, crash, crash. Countless strength path phantoms were destroyed directly by the ancient eagle hound without putting up resistance. Even Fang Yuan's true body was discovered and was sent flying. But with blood-stained conqueror's robe, there was not much injury. How could this be? There are disorderly auras of so many Gu worms appearing on this ancient eagle hound. 12th Hare and the rest blurted out in shock. 6th Hare's eyes also widened at this, as he incredulously said, "Impossible. It can actually use an immortal killer move." Such a strong result and the complex aura of Gu worms indicated this ancient eagle hound had actually used an immortal killer move just now. This no doubt went against the common knowledge of the immortal world. A wild beast actually had enough intelligence to activate immortal killer move. Wind whistled past Fang Yuan's ears. He was sent flying. Although he had avoided the frontal attack, it had still brushed past him and was enough to send him flying away. He gazed at the ancient eagle hound, his eyes brightly flashing. So it was like this, no wonder I had felt it was so peculiar. This ancient eagle hound was originally a Gu immortal. It was impossible for wild beasts to be so smart to the extent of using immortal killer moves. 6th Hare did not realize this because he did not cultivate transformation path. Fang Yuan had plenty of understanding regarding transformation path, immediately thinking of this most likely possibility. A transformation path Gu immortal who cultivated an eagle hound transformation, but because of transforming too many times or being in transformation state for too long, they were unable to turn back, losing their wisdom and memories, turning into a special ancient eagle hound. Like when refining Gu, the Gu immortals cultivating transformation path would have to face the risks when transforming into other forms. In history, such cases were not rare. The following battle proved Fang Yuan's guess. This ancient eagle hound still had some battle instincts of the transformation path Gu immortal. As a result, its performance was much more cunning than normal ancient eagle hounds, and it understood when to advance and retreat. But in the end, it was not a Gu immortal. It did not have human wisdom, it could not grasp opportunities in the battle and could not carry out any battle tactics. When in battle, it mainly used immortal Gu. When it was the juncture of life and death, its instincts would be stimulated and it subconsciously used its most familiar immortal killer move from the past. Just before, Fang Yuan had used Dark Assassination to pierce through its head, but in the moment of crisis, it had dodged and the attack struck its neck. Then, the wild shadows it erupted with that sent Fang Yuan's true body flying were from it using an immortal killer move. The fight instantly fell into a stalemate. If it were ordinary eagle hounds, Fang Yuan would have captured all of them by now. But it was a different situation with this ancient eagle hound. It was much more troublesome than ordinary ancient eagle hounds. Whenever Fang Yuan's sneak attacked, the ancient eagle hound was always able to avoid the fatal points. Perhaps it was because this transformation path Gu immortal had experienced many battles, or maybe it was because of the support of an unique immortal Gu, a more likely possibility was the help of heaven's will. In short, Fang Yuan's intention to finish the battle quickly had been thwarted. The sky was chaotic, loud sounds reverberated unceasingly as the strength path phantoms were destroyed at every moment. But with Fang Yuan's replenishment, the myriad self-army was unending. Their quality might not be up to par, but their quantity held the absolute upper hand. From time to time, eagle hounds covered by strength path phantoms would fall down from the sky and smash into the ground. Upper hand. Fang Yuan. Elder Fang Yuan has the upper hand facing all these eagle hounds. An individual's strength can actually reach such a level. Elder Fang Yuan is actually so powerful. The hairy man Gu immortals had already retreated to the edge of the battlefield, and as they looked at the battle, they had, without noticing, started to address Fang Yuan as an elder. 12th Hair's expression was filled with shock as well as bitterness. He felt it even deeper than others. Fang Yuan's enslavement path attainment of easily commanding the myriad self-army made him have a feeling of how shallow and minute he was. Although the ancient eagle hound was somewhat troublesome, from the beginning, Fang Yuan occupied the dominant position and the eagle hounds could not do anything to him. Since it is like this, then I should change my battle tactics. Fang Yuan's true body put off attacking, and suddenly retreated to the side. He began to gather his concentration to activate another immortal killer move. By now, he had already been constantly maintaining blood-stained conqueror's robe, familiar face and 3 breaths future vision. He was floating in the air and also activating Gu worms, and occasionally replenishing the myriad self-army. All these used up his focus. And this immortal killer move was rather complicated and he had yet to practice it to proficiency, thus he had to give up on attacking and move to a safer environment, to gather almost all his concentration and activate this move. Rank 7 Year Gu was first activated, followed by the supplementary Mortal Gu one after the other. Immortal Killer Move, Year Beast Summoning. Come out, my ancient Year Beast. Splash splash splash. In mid-air, a phantom image of the river of time manifested. Waves were surging endlessly in the river, and from these waves, an enormous bestial figure jumped out. Cluck cluck. The year beast unfurled its wings and descended to the battlefield. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report chapter so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 1138, End of Battle. Chapter 1138, End of Battle. Translator. Atlas Studios. Editor. Atlas Studios. What is this? Such a large chicken. Seeing an ancient year beast suddenly entering the battlefield, the hairy man Gu immortals were shocked. According to the contents of He Fan's True Inheritance, there are 12 different forms of year beasts. This time, I was pretty lucky to be able to summon a chicken year beast. Fang Yuan sized up this year beast, while appraising it inwardly. This year beast was as large as a hill. When it unfurled its wings, it cast a huge shadow on the ground. It was valiant and spirited, with awe-inspiring might. Its feathers were bright and colorful while its claws were sharp as blades. It quickly swept its gaze around the battlefield, before fixing on Fang Yuan. No one else had more appeal to it than Fang Yuan, because it smelled the scent of Year Gu from Fang Yuan. Year Gu. This was the food of year beasts. The higher the rank of the Year Gu, the more enticing it was to year beasts. The immortal killer move, Year Beast Summoning, was formed from this principle. Its creator, He Fan, had invented this killer move long before refining years flow like water. This is for you. Fang Yuan chuckled as he waved his hand, sending out large amounts of mortal Year Gu. The chicken year beast was joyous, as it raised its head and inhaled. Immediately, an enormous air current was created and like a dragon swallowing water, the chicken year beast inhaled all the mortal Year Gu. Kill it and I will give you a lot more. Fang Yuan pointed at that crucial ancient eagle hound. The chicken year beast's gaze sharpened, as it quickly turned its head towards the target. The ancient eagle hound felt goosebumps all over its body, revealing its sharp claws as it felt a strong threat from the chicken-ear beast. The ancient eagle hound formed a clear contrast with the chicken-ear beast. Even if it stood up like a human, it would not reach half the height of the chicken-ear beast. Cluck cluck. The chicken-ear beast flapped its wings, charging towards its target. The speed it erupted with was actually faster than the ancient eagle hound. Bam! The two collided fiercely. The chicken-ear beast was sent back 70 to 80 steps, while the ancient eagle hound was directly sent flying. The chicken-ear beast let out a sharp cry, as it chased after the ancient eagle hound. The ancient eagle hound was indeed crafty. After suffering a loss, it no longer confronted the chicken-ear beast head-on, instead it moved left and right, dodging the chicken-ear beast. Fang Yuan looked on for a while before he relaxed. This chicken-ear beast had no immortal Gu, but its physical constitution was much stronger than the ancient eagle hound. Year beasts, even in the River of Time, were very rare beasts. Of course, if the ancient eagle hound activated immortal Gu, the chicken-ear beast would fall into a disadvantage. Once or twice would not matter, but if it continued on, the chicken-ear beast would also be defeated. The side which had immortal Gu would naturally obtain a huge boost in their battle strength. He Fan warned in the True Inheritance that the summoned year beast is not a slave and the summoner does not have very much control over it. If the enemy is too powerful, it won't battle at all. Even if it battles, it might retreat after a short period of time and demand even more year Gu from the summoning Gu immortal. As he thought of this, Fang Yuan knew he did not have much time left. He did not choose to pincer attack the ancient eagle hound with the chicken-ear beast. Because the chicken-ear beast was not under his control and he was only able to barely communicate with it using the method left behind by He Fan, reaching a collaboration. Fang Yuan's true body, which was hidden amidst the myriad self-army, quietly approached a desolate beast eagle hound. The eagle hounds were still fighting with the myriad self-army in the air. Occasionally, some eagle hounds would be beaten down by Fang Yuan's strength path phantoms, but shortly afterwards, these eagle hounds would fly to the air again, continuing to fight. Although there were many strength path phantoms, their offensive prowess was clearly weak when facing against desolate beasts and ancient desolate beasts. They were only able to disrupt and expend the eagle hound's energy. Strength path giant hand. Suddenly, Fang Yuan attacked. A strength path giant hand appeared out of nowhere, slamming down towards an eagle hound. Fang Yuan's position was extremely good. The eagle hound was caught unprepared and was struck by the hand, immediately letting out a miserable cry before it fainted. The eagle hound began to fall down, but Fang Yuan activated another giant hand and was waiting below. The second giant hand grabbed this unconscious eagle hound, and carefully placed it on the ground. Fang Yuan's true body disappeared amongst the myriad self-army once again. But soon, he appeared in another area of the battlefield. Strength path giant hand attacked quickly and sent another eagle hound fainting. He then did the same as before, placing this eagle hound on the ground, beside the first eagle hound. The hairy man Gu immortals were all struck speechless. Elder Fang Yuan seems to be right. He intends to capture these eagle hounds alive. A skilled person is truly courageous. The hairy man Gu immortals sighed. These eagle hounds, which were deadly opponents to them, seemed to be no more than wealth from Fang Yuan's perspective. One after the other, eagle hounds were plotted against by Fang Yuan, struck unconscious, and piled up together. Soon, these unconscious eagle hounds piled up to form a hill, making for quite a grand sight. The ancient eagle hound saw this scene and gave a furious cry. But it was pinned down by the chicken-ear beast and was unable to go rescue its brethren. The chicken-ear beast was also in a slightly miserable state. Its whole body was filled with injuries and it seemed to be having the intent to retreat. After all, He Fan was a time path Gu immortal. Being able to create an immortal killer move that imitated enslavement path was already extremely amazing. It seems that your beast summoning is ideal for use in a favorable battle. If used to fight in a disadvantageous situation during a life or death battle, the result won't be outstanding. Fang Yuan engraved this information in his mind. Only when one used immortal killer moves in practice would they obtain deeper experience. Fang Yuan firmly held the initiative in the battle. He paid attention to the battle between the chicken-ear beast and the ancient eagle hound all along. Before the chicken-ear beast retreated, Fang Yuan dealt with the remaining eagle hounds. The unconscious eagle hounds numbered to 8, while the rest were struck to death. After all, Giant Hand was not a capturing method. It was not easy for Fang Yuan to use it to imitate this effect. Die! Fang Yuan flew to the sky and flanked the ancient eagle hound with the chicken-ear beast. After fighting for several rounds, the result was indeed not good. Fang Yuan called out to the chicken-ear beast to retreat and guard those unconscious eagle hounds. The chicken-ear beast already had low battle intent, and after receiving Fang Yuan's instruction, it did not immediately move, but instead quietly retreated a distance before opening its beak as it gazed at Fang Yuan. Fang Yuan understood its intention, and threw out a large batch of ear goo. The chicken-ear beast had its fill, only then did it turn around and move towards the ground, to guard the unconscious eagle hounds. Fang Yuan and the ancient eagle hound battled once again. But this time, the situation was different from before. The ancient eagle hound was anxious to save those unconscious comrades, as it charged in all directions. What a pity! A Grand Gu immortal falling down to such a level. Thinking it is an actual eagle hound. Fang Yuan was lot more relaxed now than before. The ancient eagle hound flew fast, and with immortal goo on it, at the crucial times, it could arouse its survival instincts and activate the previous immortal killer move. Fang Yuan changed his battle tactic. His previous tactic of charging in and using Giant Hand was too risky. Bloodstained Conqueror's robe's defense was nothing prominent in front of this ancient eagle hound. Fang Yuan started using sword path killer moves to attack the ancient eagle hound from afar. But the ancient eagle hound's defensive method was outstanding. Fang Yuan did not know which immortal goo it was specifically. He estimated this transformation path goo immortal, when alive, felt the defense of an eagle hound was rather low, thus intentionally strengthening this aspect. Fang Yuan fought for a long time but still had no upper hand. The ancient eagle hound also could not rescue its comrades, while the chicken-ear beast sat in position to fight a defensive battle. The injuries on the ancient eagle hound slowly accumulated. This is truly troublesome. Giant Hand's speed is slow, it cannot hit. Sword path killer moves can hit, but the effect is not that good. Using poison spit is simply wasting immortal essence. Ancient eagle hounds are extremely resistant to poison. Fang Yuan was without other options. Similarly, after this transformation path Gu immortal completely transformed into the ancient eagle hound, they obtained the intuition of wild beasts, and with the remaining battle instincts, this ancient eagle hound became much more difficult to handle. Facing it, Fang Yuan found himself at a loss as to what to do. A transformation path Gu immortal's advantage was that after the transformation succeeds, their body's constitution would be extremely high. Like this ancient eagle hound, just its flying speed could match sword escape in short range. Let alone when it activates its immortal goo. At the moment, Fang Yuan could only choose to fight a battle of attrition. When this ancient eagle hound uses up all its immortal essence, and is no longer able to activate its immortal goo, that would be his victory. Or when its injuries accumulate to a certain degree and it exposes a flaw which Fang Yuan could use. Fang Yuan felt helpless, but the spectators did not have this feeling. The hairy man Gu immortals were staring blankly. Strength. In the competitive, cruel world of Gu immortals, the most important thing was the Gu immortal's strength. The strength Fang Yuan displayed shocked all the hairy men. Even Sixth Hair was not an exception. This guy, how could he increase his battle strength so much in such a short time? He can actually summon a year beast. How did he get a hold of this method? He clearly only went out for a short period of time. Sixth Hair felt heaviness in his mind. Fang Yuan's growth speed caused him to feel stifled and breathless. After some more time fighting, the ancient eagle hound suddenly rose up. You want to escape? Fang Yuan thought before quickly giving chase. The ancient eagle hound's injuries had accumulated to a certain state, whether it be its offensive prowess or flying speed, both had clearly fallen. No matter how talented in battle the Gu immortal was when they were alive, the wild beast's instinct of evading danger still made it choose to retreat. As for those unconscious comrades, they could only be abandoned. Fang Yuan inwardly cursed at this. He had already anticipated this situation, it was just that it happened earlier than his expectation. Fang Yuan activated Sword Escape Immortal Gu to give chase, but the distance between them was shrinking very slowly. The ancient eagle hound was escaping for its life with an astonishing speed. Immortal Killer Move, Luck Whirlwind. Fang Yuan was without other options and could only activate this killer move. Success. The ancient eagle hound directly returned to the previous position. Fang Yuan caught up to it and both sides engaged in fierce battle again. After a few rounds of fighting, the ancient eagle hound escaped again. Fang Yuan could only give chase. Luck Whirlwind. Success. Both sides battled again, while the hairy man Gu immortals watched on from afar. But soon, the ancient eagle hound gave up on Fang Yuan. It crazily flapped its wings as it retreated for a third time, its attitude more firm than before. Fang Yuan was helpless, he was unable to break the eagle's wings. Luck Whirlwind. Unfortunately, he failed this time and immediately spurted out some blood. It took him a few breaths to stabilize himself. The ancient eagle hound had already flown to the horizon by this time. Fang Yuan had no choice but to stop. Heaven's Will was paying attention all along. Tai Chiu was perilous, and there were already vague signs of a beast tide forming. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report chapter so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 1139, Deadly Situation. Chapter 1139, Deadly Situation. Translator. Atlas Studios. Editor. Atlas Studios. There was not much time to practice Luck Whirlwind properly. Fang Yuan thought as he sighed. If Luck Whirlwind was activated on its own, the success rate of its activation was 80 to 90%. But when put in real battle, it was a different situation. For instance, Fang Yuan had to maintain Bloodstained Conqueror's Robe, Familiar Face, 3 Breaths Future Vision, and other immortal killer moves. These killer moves involved large numbers of Gu worms and needed enormous mental energy. In this situation, activating Luck Whirlwind, which he was not proficient in, and being able to activate it twice successfully already showed Fang Yuan's luck was quite good. Immortal killer moves had outstanding effects, but their expenditure of mental energy was very high. Let alone in life and death battle, where one had to maintain their attention on the enemy, consider battle tactics as well as making appropriate responses in time. As a result, it was not the case that the more immortal killer moves activated in battle, the better. If the mind was burdened over the limit, one might not be able to give a correct response to an enemy's sudden attack or might not even be able to react in time, leading to their defeat and death. That would truly be laughable. In fact, there were countless such laughable ends in the history of Gu immortals. Examples of extremely powerful killer moves failing in activation and causing the Gu immortal to die were not few. To resolve this issue, I can only raise my battle strength even further. Besides adding in more practice and modifying the immortal killer moves to make them simpler, Wisdom Path can be used to solve it. Immortal killer moves were created from the combination of countless Gu worms. Activating each Gu worm expended at least one thought of the Gu immortal. Successfully activating one immortal killer move would expend thousands or even tens of thousands of the Gu immortal's thoughts. Wisdom Path was a path that was specialized in solving this issue. Wisdom Path Gu immortals were often able to use a greater number of and more complex immortal killer moves than Gu immortals of other paths. Among the Wisdom Path inheritances I have obtained, the most important one is still Dong Fang Changfan's Wisdom Star True Inheritance. It is specialized in deducing and is not specialized in controlling goo worms and activating killer moves. But I am now a Wisdom Path Grandmaster, I can fully use this foundation to develop on this aspect and make a breakthrough. After Fang Yuan sent the ancient eagle hound escaping away, he examined his own shortcomings while returning, and decided he had to progress on Wisdom Path next. Descending on the ground, Fang Yuan patted his stomach and opened the entrance to his immortal aperture. The entrance opened, revealing a part of the landscape in the sovereign immortal aperture. Sixth Hair stared fixedly, but how could he be able to see properly from outside the entrance? He only saw a desolate icy plain. That was many northern plains of sovereign blessed land. Sixth Hair let out a sigh of relief at this. It seems he focused on raising his battle strength, while the management of the immortal aperture has fallen. It's no wonder, after all this sovereign immortal aperture faces calamity once every 2 months. Sixth Hair simply did not know Fang Yuan had completely plundered Heifan Grotto Heaven. He thought Fang Yuan was still a pauper. Little did he know that the other areas of sovereign blessed land were beautiful mountains and rivers, lush forests, and shocking amounts of rich resources. Regardless, this is genuine rank 7 battle strength. Sixth Hair's eyes twitched as he gazed at the chicken-ear beast. Fang Yuan might only be rank 6, but he already holds rank 7 strength. Adding on to another rank 7 battle strength, I definitely need to report this matter to Lord Ing Wuxie. The chicken-ear beast clucked in happiness. Fang Yuan fed it large numbers of ear goo, making it extremely satisfied. Finally, it flapped its wings and jumped into the river of time, slowly disappearing from sight. Taking in the eagle hounds one after the other into his immortal aperture, along with the falling star hound, and after sending away the chicken-ear beast, Fang Yuan turned around and faced the hairy man Gu immortals. This mission should be considered done by me, right? Fang Yuan lightly smiled, using an inquiring tone to ask these hairy men. The hairy man Gu immortals nodded, their expressions were more or less filled with reluctance, helplessness and embarrassment. This was the fact. Without Fang Yuan making a move, their lives would have been in danger. 12th Hair opened his mouth as if to say something, but even after moving his mouth multiple times, he did not manage to say a word. He thought of his meager performance and how he had an exaggerated opinion of his own abilities. He could not help feeling ashamed. Sixth Hair was observing the others' expressions, and spoke with a sinister smile. Elder Fang Yuan, you are truly amazing, you were able to defeat the Eagle Hound group by yourself. If we had not seen it personally, none of us would have believed it. If you had made a move earlier, the falling star hound or whatever would have been nothing difficult, right? The hairy man Gu immortals heard this and their expressions changed slightly, feeling even more complicated. I have my own problems, I don't want to explain to you. First Supreme Elder knows about them. Fang Yuan chuckled, he then gazed at everyone before looking at 12th Hair. All right. This matter is over now, let us return. With the teleportation Gu formation, everyone returned to Xianxia blessed land. After hearing everyone's report, Xianxia land spirit's attitude softened by a lot. He was not very shocked at Fang Yuan's battle strength. Because he knew Fang Yuan had once possessed Spring Autumn Cicada and had reborn. A rank 6 possessing rank 7 battle strength was rare, but for Fang Yuan, it was not hard to understand. Having eased his relationship with Xianxia land spirit, and obtaining the 1,000 contribution points from completing the Falling Star Hound mission, Fang Yuan was able to smoothly borrow Gu worms to use Immortal Tribulation tempering aperture. Over the following days, Fang Yuan cultivated in peace. He mainly cultivated his soul using Dang Hun Mountain and Luo Pa Valley, secretly trained the new killer moves like Luck Whirlwind, and in his free time, he looked after the newly obtained infant Falling Star Hound and the group of Eagle Hounds. Regarding these desolate beasts and the ancient Eagle Hound, they only needed to slightly adapt to the new environment and could live in peace. Regardless of where they lived, they were still living, right? This was the behavior of those without intelligence. As for the countless resources moved over from Heifan Grotto Heaven, Fang Yuan placed most of them in Mini Southern Border. Because Mini Southern Border's environment was rather similar to Heifan Grotto Heaven's. Despite this, because the Tao marks of Fang Yuan's immortal aperture could not compare to He Fan Grotto Heaven, many resources had reduced production and some were even on the verge of dying. As a result, Fang Yuan still had a concern, which was to quickly sell these resources that he could not grow. Besides transacting with Langya Land Spirit, the focus was on Treasure Yellow Heaven. In a short period of time, Fang Yuan accumulated a large number of immortal essence stones. After using a portion of the resources, the slightly insufficient immortal essence reserve was no longer a worry, and now it had become Fang Yuan's strong point. So much green grape immortal essence. I don't have to worry even if I activate triple-layered sword wave 100 times. Fang Yuan had never possessed so much green grape immortal essence. This made him even more confident for his fourth earthly calamity. Time passed, finally it was time for Fang Yuan to pass another earthly calamity again. He left Langya Blessed Land and came to the northern icy plain. After choosing an area, he placed down his immortal aperture and opened its entrance, absorbing heaven and earth chi. This time, the duration of the absorption of heaven and earth chi was tens of times as long as before. The reason was that the resources inside Fang Yuan's immortal aperture had increased by hundreds of times, expending large amounts of heaven and earth chi of the immortal aperture. Fang Yuan then arranged immortal tribulation tempering aperture. Everything was handled with ease. After finishing the preparations, Fang Yuan closed the Blessed Land's entrance, and welcomed the fourth earthly calamity. It was still at many northern plains. Fang Yuan encountered endless flying frost. This is, profound white flying salt calamity. Fang Yuan was stunned, before recognizing it. He was slightly surprised. This calamity was not strong, instead it was the type which could be passed rather easily. Yellowish clouds started forming in the sky. Large amounts of frost salt slowly fell down from the sky. The whole process was silent, the salt was like snow and there was not any wind. The endless salt fell down on the ground, and melted the ice and snow on the ground. Some cold-resistant wild grasses and flowers that had grown on the snow were submerged by the salt, and were wilting rapidly before completely dying. It is trying to destroy many northern plains ecology. Fang Yuan was slightly perplexed. For the moment, he did not move and only looked on from the side. Although there were some losses, most of his resources were currently gathered in Mini southern border. Mini northern plains was the area Fang Yuan had been using to pass tribulations. Fang Yuan could completely bear these losses before, let alone now when he had harvested He Fan Grotto Heaven's accumulation, and had become extremely wealthy. After a while, snowmen started to appear from the endless salt and frost. This was the influence of Reckless Savage's true meaning. So long as Fang Yuan killed these snowmen, he could obtain Reckless Savage's true meaning, rapidly raising his transformation path and strength path attainment levels. This time was not like the previous time where he shared with Chu Du. Fang Yuan was going to enjoy it all by himself. Fang Yuan quickly made a move. These snowmen had just appeared when they were melted by the flying salt. The intention of heavens will manifest it at this moment. It wanted to reduce Fang Yuan's benefits from the earthly calamity, as much as possible. Fang Yuan and heavens will race to strike at the snowmen. Myriad Self was activated, eliminating these snowmen. Naturally, there were also other methods used. These had to be done by Fang Yuan himself. Other existences, whether they be Gu immortal or desolate beasts, whoever killed the snowmen would be the one to obtain Reckless Savage's true meaning. Waves of Reckless Savage's true meaning entered Fang Yuan's mind, quickly raising his attainment level. As for the profound white flying salt, they were inexorable and not something Fang Yuan could directly get rid of. This fourth earthly calamity continued for a long time. Even when the duration of the previous 3 earthly calamities were added, they would not even be 1/10 of this earthly calamity. 3 days later, profound white flying salt scale began to slightly decrease. Is this a battle of attrition? Fang Yuan frowned, somewhat puzzled. Several days went by again, the profound white flying salt calamity finally stopped. Fang Yuan gazed at the frost salt that had covered the land, the doubt in his mind intensifying. According to his previous deduction, the fourth earthly calamity should have been even more strong, even more difficult to handle. But the reality was, the profound white flying salt calamity had been mild from start to finish. It descended gradually. Fang Yuan did not feel any pressure at all. He was even able to destroy almost all of the snowmen, not wasting much of reckless savage's true meaning. His gains were plentiful. It was as if Heaven's will was letting him go. Previously, I used some time path killer moves in Tai Chiu. It was also to test Heaven's will's deduction ability and to see how it deals with me afterwards. The result was the profound white flying salt calamity. No matter what, the fourth earthly calamity is now over. I can let the land of salt remain. After cleansing it with self-will, I can treat it as a special environment. This earthly calamity was unimaginably easy. Fang Yuan did not suffer even a small injury. Fang Yuan retrieved his immortal aperture and was about to return to Langya blessed land. But right at this moment, the surroundings suddenly changed. Fang Yuan entered a battlefield killer move. 9 Gu immortals appeared around him, along with an enormous dragon-shaped beast whose aura was majestic and boundless, staring at Fang Yuan with hostility. Immemorial desolate beast. Fang Yuan's heart immediately sank to rock bottom. He immediately comprehended, human calamity. So Heaven's will was intentionally extending the duration of my tribulation to set up this deadly situation for me. In an instant, Fang Yuan had fallen deep into a predicament. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report chapter so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 1140, The Sliver of Hope to Survive. Chapter 1140, The Sliver of Hope to Survive. Translator. Atlas Studios. Editor. Atlas Studios. The surrounding area was frost white in color. Countless gray clouds, the size of carriages, hovered around Fang Yuan. Although Fang Yuan did not feel any wind, these clouds coiled around him swiftly, like hunting sharks or a pack of starving wolves. This is a battlefield immortal killer move. And one which I have not seen before. It seems to be mostly formed of cloud path. Fang Yuan was fully vigilant, and after the brief shock, his mind worked rapidly, analyzing the situation. Forget about the battlefield immortal killer move. The main point is there are actually 9 Gu immortals and a dragon immemorial desolate beast. Fang Yuan observed the 9 figures. These mysterious Gu immortals were covered in a layer of gray clouds, covering their true appearances, only revealing their eyes. As for the Gu immortals' auras, the clouds could not hide them, they were leaked. That dragon beast was also covered in a thick layer of gray cloud as it hovered, facing Fang Yuan. It was completely releasing its majestically shocking aura. In Fang Yuan's perception, the dragon was like a lofty mountain, while he himself was like an ant at the base of the mountain. Fang Yuan was shocked. This group was too powerful. He could not even think of being their match. Strange. How could there be so many people lying in ambush? Besides shock, Fang Yuan also felt an enormous doubt. The northern icy plain rarely had humans, as there were almost no resources in it. This was a desolate land created by reckless savage demon venerable. The only wealth to be found was reckless savage's true meaning, which Chu Duke desired very much. As a result, Gu immortals rarely came here. Moreover, before each earthly calamity, Fang Yuan would gather intel about any movements regarding Northern Plains' righteous forces, through Treasure Yellow Heaven, Langya sect and even Chu Du. There was no commotion from Northern Plains' super forces. Because of He tribe's extermination, everyone was absorbing their gains, and adapting to the completely new power structure of forces. Almost all of these righteous forces had territories in Northern Plains which were guarded by Gu immortals. In fact, it was difficult for Huang Jin tribes to mobilize 3 or 4 Gu immortals at once, unless something big happened. While demonic path and lone immortals might be free, they usually moved alone. How could they suddenly gather into one group? Moreover, I have been holed up inside Langya blessed land for almost all the time, avoiding wisdom path Gu immortals deductions. I am also protected by dark limit and other methods. It is almost impossible for my traces to be deduced so clearly. Where did these Gu immortals come from? Could they be from Central Continent? Previously, to investigate the truth of 88 True Yang building, Central Continent's 10 great ancient sects had allied and built a team of Gu immortals to send to Northern Plains. Currently, Heavenly Court was trying every means possible to deal with Shadow Sect and Fang Yuan. It would not be strange if they sent out another group. However, Central Continent's Gu immortals, especially from the 10 great ancient sects or Heavenly Court, did things openly and in a grand style. How could they act so evasively like now? These Gu immortals' appearances were hidden, even the immemorial desolate beast was the same, and only their vague figures could be seen. Maybe this is only an illusion created by the battlefield killer move. Fang Yuan quickly speculated. From the time he put away his immortal aperture and prepared to return, to being ambushed, falling into the trap and his current analysis of countermeasures, only a short few moments had passed. The mental capability of the body from the sovereign immortal fetus was excellent by itself, and with wisdom path methods to support him, Fang Yuan had already reacted. If it truly was such a terrifying formation, Fang Yuan did not have any hope. But he felt the probability of this being an illusion was huge, because the origins of these Gu immortals could not be explained at all. A sharp light blossomed in Fang Yuan's eyes. At the next moment he decisively activated Sword Escape Immortal Gu and charged towards the Gu immortals. The 9 Gu immortals did not react as if they were stupefied. Fang Yuan flew nearer before stopping. 3 breaths Future Vision and Bloodstained Conqueror's Robe were already activated as he pointed, sword light shot out. Immortal Killer Move, Sword Marks Targeting Death. A Gu immortal with rank 6 aura moved. But a rank 7 female Gu immortal to the side grabbed their shoulder. You can't take on this move, let me. Her voice had just sounded out, when she pointed with a finger, an ice mirror immediately appeared in the air. The sword light condensed by sword marks targeting death shot at the ice mirror, but it did not pierce through, instead it was reflected away. She is able to change the direction of my immortal killer move. Fang Yuan's heart chilled, as he quickly maneuvered sword marks targeting death back to the original direction. His sword marks targeting death's direction could be controlled by the mind once it was activated. It was just that this killer move was extremely fast and was not easy to manipulate. Sword marks targeting death returned to its proper path with difficulty, but suddenly there was another ice mirror in front. Fang Yuan could only helplessly look as sword marks targeting death derailed once again. Then, there were the 3rd, 4th, and following ice mirrors, surrounding sword marks targeting death, actually making it go around in a circle. This is bad. This Gu immortal's method counters my sword marks targeting death. Fang Yuan's heart sank. A second rank 7 Gu immortal suddenly took a step forward and gave a deep bellow, an ice spear immediately condensing in his hand. He then pulled back his arm, like drawing a bow, and after stretching to the limit, he threw the spear towards Fang Yuan. The ice spear produced a heart-shaking screech as it pierced through the air. Cold air overflowed and vapor was frozen along the way, turning into beautiful frost that floated in the air. The breathtaking scene, however, carried intense killing intent. This is an immortal killer move formed with rank 7 immortal Gu as the core. Fang Yuan quickly jumped back to dodge the spear. But this ice spear was like sword marks targeting death, its direction could be controlled. Fang Yuan could not dodge, gritting his teeth inwardly. He knew just Bloodstained Conqueror's Robe could not block this move, so he sent out Strength Path Giant Hand. The giant hand suddenly appeared and created a barrier. It blocked in front of Fang Yuan. The ice spear reached the giant hand, immediately piercing through it and striking Fang Yuan. Fang Yuan was sent flying backwards, thick ice condensed on his whole body and even the blood which he spurted out condensed into blocks of ice. His blood asset Immortal Gu also suffered damage. If he continued to activate it, blood asset Immortal Gu might be seriously injured or even destroyed. But in this situation, how could Fang Yuan care about this? He could only crazily use blood asset Immortal Gu to barely maintain Bloodstained Conqueror's Robe. The 2 rank 7 Gu immortals are not illusions. What about the others then? Fang Yuan swallowed his blood and clapped, using the killer move Miri itself. In an instant, large numbers of strength path phantoms surged out and covered everyone's sight. These mysterious Gu immortals looked stunned. The third rank 7 Gu immortal smiled and called out, "Let me." He raised his arms and puffed his cheeks, before fiercely blowing. Spiraling wind shot out of his mouth. Within the blink of an eye, the wind enlarged to an enormous tornado. The tornado was as high as 30 meters, its two ends were wide while the middle part was thinner, and was dark green in color. It spiraled frantically, sharp as blades as it engulfed all the strength path phantoms in its path and easily ripped them into pieces. The size of the myriad self-army sharply reduced by more than half in a short period of time. Fang Yuan quickly replenished the numbers. "Brother, I will lend you a hand." The fourth rank 7 Gu immortal spoke in a muffled voice. He pointed with his index finger, targeting the tornado. Instantaneously, a certain mysterious immortal killer move was activated. The tornado split into two, before turning into four. Within moments, 4 enormous tornadoes ravaged the battlefield. Their power had increased by 4 times. This. Fang Yuan's mind shook once again, feeling the situation was far from good. Since the battle started, he had suffered light injuries. Blood Asset Immortal Gu was injured and was in a danger of dying if it was continued to be used. While at the enemy's side, that immemorial desolate beast had yet to move. Among the 9 Gu immortals, 4 rank 7s had each activated an immortal killer move, which were either mysterious and awe-inspiring, or profound and exquisite. Could it be, this is not an illusion? As if he had fallen into an abyss, Fang Yuan's heart sank. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Wind whistled crazily. In a few short moments, the myriad self-army was going to be completely destroyed even if Fang Yuan continuously replenished them. The quality of the strength path phantoms was too low, their numbers could not be put to good use in front of rank 7 killer moves. Myriad Self, which had always been successful, now was in an awkward place, and was not able to change the situation for Fang Yuan. No, there is still an advantage of Myriad Self, it can at least expend the enemy's immortal essence. I have a strong point in this aspect. But there are a lot of enemies, while I am alone, this advantage is as good as nothing. What can I do? The difference in strength between the two sides was so great that any battle tactic looked useless. In fact, these mysterious Gu immortals did not work together at once. Every time they made a move, they took turns. If this immortal-level battlefield killer move was not entrapping him, perhaps Fang Yuan could make his getaway. Unfortunately, the enemy had already prepared amply. Fang Yuan also lacked space path methods, escaping itself was a problem, not to mention he still had to face 4 rank 7 and 5 rank 6 Gu immortals, as well as that immemorial desolate beast. This was an extremely dangerous peril. This situation was simply the worst. Compared to his first life where he was besieged by righteous path Gu immortals, this was innumerably more dangerous. After all, at that time, there had not been an immemorial desolate beast to control the situation. Fang Yuan probed these Gu immortals, but regarding the immemorial desolate beast, he did not even have a thought of probing it. Fang Yuan was relying on continuously activating Myriad Self to survive in this worsening situation. One after the other, the Gu immortals made moves, strength path phantoms were almost annihilated. The Myriad Self army, which had always until now been surging with overwhelming momentum, simply could not form a large scale. Am I going to die here today? An intense sensation of incoming death shrouded Fang Yuan's mind. Requesting for reinforcements would not work. Within this battlefield killer move, Fang Yuan could not even connect to treasure yellow heaven. However, he had still not given up. His thoughts moved like lightning, and he suddenly remembered, no, I still have a chance of survival. This chance of survival was not Spring-Autumn Cicada. Spring-Autumn Cicada was filled with Heaven's Will. Heaven's Will was trying all methods possible to eradicate Fang Yuan. Using Spring-Autumn Cicada was courting death. This chance of survival was in the upper extreme Heavenly Eagle. If it was before Fang Yuan obtained He Fan's true inheritance, his death would be certain at this moment. But it was different now, he still had one hope left. The upper extreme Heavenly Eagle was also an immemorial desolate beast, it was just that it was only an infant currently with desolate beast level strength. However, He Fan's true inheritance naturally had time path immortal killer moves that could speed up the upper extreme heavenly eagle's aging and push it to grow in a short period of time. With this, Fang Yuan would have rank 8 battle strength. Coincidentally, the upper extreme heavenly eagle was also a space path immemorial desolate beast that could enter and exit grotto heavens and the immemorial 9 heavens. There was a huge chance it could pierce through this battlefield killer move. Persevere. I need to persevere until the upper extreme heavenly eagle reaches rank 8. When he thought of this, Fang Yuan immediately changed his battle tactics. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report chapter so we can fix it as soon as possible.